A lot is on the line in the NFC South between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Carolina Panthers in Week 16. Plus, which AFC contender will show up between the Broncos and the Jaguars? The Ultimate NFL Pregame Show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 16 in the NFL is here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the number one sports podcast network, and from the primetime game of the Patriots and the Ravens to the big 4:00 window matchup between the Broncos and the Jaguars to why that NFC South battle between the Panthers and the Buccaneers has so much on the line. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And want to first, before we dive into the Week 16 action, tell you that today's episode of the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We'll start on Saturday. There are two Saturday games going on in the NFL in Week 16, and we'll kick it off with the Eagles and the Commanders, a huge NFC East battle between those two teams. David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles take you through keys to victory and so much more.
Keys to victory time, Louis, and as the visiting squad, I'm going to go ahead and let you go first.
For me, I think the Eagles need to stay ahead of the sticks. I mentioned it earlier, but on the offensive side of the football, they need to start faster. This team is better when they have a lead, when they can run the football and control time of possession late. The key to that is being a better offense on 1st and 10. They are just so bad on first downs this year where it's 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7+, and that's not the strength of this football team. So I think number one, stay ahead of the sticks, early down success on offense. Number two would be, like I mentioned earlier, stopping Marcus Mariota from making plays outside of structure with his legs, running the football, using his legs to create for the passing game. Normally when you play an inferior opponent that has a mobile quarterback, that's a way they kind of even the score a little bit. And then number three, no penalties and turnovers. This offense, they already are inconsistent. When they have the penalties they've had so often this year or the turnovers during that losing streak, they're just going to give this team no chance. So I think that's an obvious one, but the offense has been plagued with penalties and turnovers pretty much all year. So just don't beat yourself against an inferior opponent. They did a really good job of that against the Raiders. That's why I gave them credit in that win. But they got to be disciplined and do it again this week in order to clinch this division.
Yeah, look, man, being a great team starts with not beating yourself. Don't do the things. I call it feeding the gremlins, right? Like you're supposed to beat a team.
Exactly.
Don't feed them. You know what I mean? Once you feed them, those gremlins turn pretty nasty, pretty stinking quick. So, no, I see where you're coming from. Keys to victory for the Washington side. We already kind of talked about it, right? Attack that left side, test that Eagles run defense weakness, and make sure, find out if that's going to be something you can exploit. And if it is, man, exploit it for 60 minutes. I think also in the passing game, there's 3 zones I want to see Marcus Mariota targeting: short left, short right, and deep left. The good news here, and the reason I picked these areas, is because that's where the Philadelphia Eagles tend to give up either high completion percentages or lots of yards, or a combination of the two. Obviously, deep left is like shooting a 3 in the NBA. You're going to have a lower completion percentage, but they are completing at a decent rate, and the yards are pretty big there. It also happens to be where number 17 lines up, Terry McLaurin. We've seen the Eagles employ strategies, Vic Fangio, to just completely wipe Terry McLaurin off the face of the earth. That last year, the first game, I called it the Philadelphia Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. They just put 3 dudes around Terry and said, beat us somewhere else. And unfortunately, the Commanders couldn't make it happen. But the third thing, Louis, special teams. Look, I said this last week specifically because the Giants didn't have their main punter. They were bringing in a new punter. And I was like, that's going to be significant. And all kinds of people were like, dude, what are you talking about? A practice squad punter is one of your keys to this game. Listen, because of that practice squad punter, not only did the rugby style kicking from that punter throw off the Washington Commanders blocking scheme just a little bit, it threw off the Giants coverage schemes. Jalen Lane ends up with his second punt return touchdown of the season as a rookie. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with the Philadelphia Eagles. However, getting those free yards. The Washington Commanders have the 4th best kick return average in the National Football League. The Philadelphia Eagles are allowing nearly 25 yards per kickoff return. Exploit that matchup and turn the need to get 4 first downs, get in scoring range into 3 first downs, or even into 2 first downs, or get a touchdown without having to put the offense on the field. That would be a wonderful thing, obviously. So that special teams phase, I think, can also have an impact in this game.
No, I agree. And I think, again, when you look at upsets in the NFL, when they do happen, special teams plays a big part in it. When the Eagles lost to the Cowboys, late in the 4th quarter, they fumbled a punt return that set the Cowboys up inside their own 15, and that's when the game really got put away. Even against the Chargers, like, they miss a field goal at the end of the half, missing extra points. Like, that's hurt the Eagles a lot in games this year. So, again, part of not shooting yourself in the foot, not, like you said, feeding the gremlins, would be to also have success in special teams. Like Nick Sirianni talks about it all the time. Be elite, do the things best that require no talent, and that's been an up and down thing for Philadelphia this year. So I totally get that. I wouldn't stick my nose up at special teams at all. It's always a key to an upset in this league.
You can find David over at Locked On Commanders. You can find Louie over at Locked On Eagles, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, we have the Saturday night matchup, NFC North, Packers and Bears. Huge battle. These two teams played just a couple weeks ago. Round 2, here we go. Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears, Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers. Talk about which NFC North team will come out on top.
I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Bears and Locked On Packers your first listens of the day. Hopefully you're an everydayer. If you want to join the Everydayers Club as well, you can listen to each of these shows ad-free. If you go to lockedonbears.supercast.com or lockedonpackers.supercast.com, you can get the everyday ad-free version of Locked On Bears and Locked On Packers. But we're going to still be for you here, free and open to listen to on all the platforms every day. Anyway, getting you ready for, still weird to say, Saturday night's big matchup between these two teams.
Don't forget Locked On Sports Today. Don't forget that. Locked On Sports Today, our all sports flagship show you get with your Everydayer Club membership. So you get 2 for the price of 1.
Well, I heard the host of that show isn't any good. But,
yeah.
But
that's mom listens. That's enough.
The Bears are 1.5 point underdogs at home right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. The books think the Packers are still the favorite team, despite the injuries and despite, I mean, it's very, very small, but still, considering Green Bay was 7-point favorites the first time, and now it's 1.5. They're still.
It opened at 2.5, right? So like that kind of makes sense. Like if you think about it, home field advantage is 1.5. So what I was trying to explain is on a neutral site, Packers probably 5.5 point favorites 2 weeks ago. In Chicago, probably 3.5 point favorites. Then they lost, and they lost Micah Parsons. So that I think it makes sense that number comes down. It opened at 2.5 though, so not that much, and has been bet to 1.5 now. So we'll see.
See, I get this feeling around Packers media, fans, and the team would never say, but like this real demoralization from these injuries. This feeling of like kind of, pack it up, like not like you're tanking the rest of the season, but just like, well, your hopes of the Super Bowl are gone, so why does this really matter? And Peter, is there any concern of like when Matt LaFleur does a press conference and spends most of the time talking about, all these guys are gonna be gone? Is there like an undertone there of like, is there any concern about energy and like not buy-in per se, but just like there being this big letdown of like, oh geez, oh woe is us a little bit, even if not verbally?
If they were doing anything this week other than playing the Bears in Chicago, I would say yes. But because of the second half, the last time these two teams played, the way that it ended, the feeling that the Packers had in that game, the chippiness that they then carried into Denver, by the way, if Bears fans were not paying attention, there was a pre-game scrap in Denver between the Packers and the Broncos. Like these two teams don't hate each other. Like these two teams don't even know each other.
They just saw Packers orange and got confused.
I mean, look, maybe there's some like color blindness. I don't quite know what happened there, but like it's one of those things where Jeff Hafley spoke on Wednesday, and if it weren't Jeff Hafley, and if I hadn't seen this defense in particular fly around all season long and play with that sort of swagger and attitude, and then after Micah Parsons goes out, like let's not forget this. In the last 5 minutes, the Packers got 2 fourth down stops against the Broncos to give the Packers offense a chance to go down and tie the game and send it to overtime. Now the Packers offense at that point, they could not protect Jordan Love. He was DOA on those plays. Like if you go back and watch, especially like the 3rd and 15 and 4th and 15s, like he just has no shot. He gets to his back foot and there's someone in his lap on both of those plays. But it's just they kept fighting, they kept playing, and that's who these guys are. They're just they have a different attitude this year than I have seen, I would say, since 2019, and maybe 2021, but that team didn't feel the same defensively as this team does in terms of just the attitude that they play with. And Jordan Love is such a calming force in all of this. Like, I think that they've seen Jordan Love this year ascend to a level of quarterback play where you just feel like if he's your quarterback, you have a chance to win every week. And I think that it's not, he will not be Aaron Rodgers level in all likelihood, in terms of like, well, we've got Aaron, like we can beat anybody. But I do think that gives everybody a little bit more of that confidence to say, like, this is the same team basically that we had August 15th, for the team to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and go, this is the team we thought we could win the Super Bowl with in August. So why not now? And I think I think if it was the Ravens, I'd be worried about a letdown. If they were playing I was going to say the Steelers, but like Aaron Rodgers probably gives them enough juice to carry that through. But like the Bears it's the perfect week. It's the perfect opponent on a short week, no less, to just like, let's just wash the taste out of your mouths and go and fight. Like that's the thing here that I think for the Packers. Now, the other side of that for the Bears, Lauren, is they didn't get the first one. And I'm sure they felt like they could have and should have. Is there an added sense of urgency, do you think, from the Bears because of the way the first game went? And I guess the crucial follow-up is, do you think that matters?
Yeah, so I will say in the post-game locker room after they beat the Browns on Sunday, one of the Bears players got the game ball. I think it was the linebacker, DeMarco Jackson. In his post-game speech says, like, they just finished beating the Browns. He goes, now we got to go get that bad taste out of our mouth on Saturday. Like, immediately, the Browns game is over, and it's like, Packers. We lost the Packers. We got to go beat the Packers. So very much focused there. Does that? I don't think it makes that much of a difference, because I think it's just as much as they were the first time, and that energy and intensity and focus and desire is not going to be what separates them from winning and losing this game. Yeah. I think for me, it's going to be about kind of. Well, first of all, I think Ben Johnson's going to need to scheme his butt off with the receiver deficiencies that they have. Like, he's going to have to manufacture open routes.
Colston Loveland game, right?
What's that again?
Colston Loveland game.
Yes. I think we're going to see a lot of Colston Loveland. I think we're going to see more Cole Kmet, a lot of DJ Moore, obviously, but they're going to want to lean in the running game and just say, like, I don't know that my receivers are going to be able to create the separation for me. So I got to make sure that conceptually other routes are creating space that receiver can just run into, as opposed to guy. Like if I'm Green Bay, I wouldn't mind man-to-man coveraging quite a bit here. You help out on DJ Moore, but let those other guys try and beat you and keep Caleb Williams in the pocket. I think that would go a long way. But if they could just not beat themselves in that regard and not get behind and down a distance from penalties, certainly not turning the ball over on the last throw of the game would make a big difference. Like, I don't think Chicago feels like they have to do a bunch of stuff drastically different from the first time, but just kind of like simple, like slow things down, play your game a little bit more, and you can hold on for a potential victory.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to see a bunch of man coverage specifically, but I do think you will see them more willing to play press, which is something we saw last year. They when you play cover two, if you're going to play Tampa, like, you press up on the outside. Bears fans, and they watched the Bears play that Tampa 2 for years, Lovie Smith and all that good stuff with Brian Urlacher. You can play physical on the outside. And so if it's going to be Zacchaeus and, DJ Moore is probably going to play a lot in the slot, then, you obviously you can't press in the slot the same sort of way. But I think the Packers, if Evan Williams doesn't play, they have a good answer with Javon Bullard, who was, I think it's easy to forget now, the no doubt day one starter as a safety last year before they had to move him to the slot. He was really, he played awesome in the Bears game 2 weeks ago. I mean, he was flying around. They signed Nate Hobbs, who's not been able to get back on the field because he was not good as a boundary corner. He's really a slot corner. That's his best position. So I think they have some answers there. To me, for the Packers, you have to contain Caleb Williams in the pocket, and you have to protect Jordan Love. Those are the things. Like, I think I said this before the Bears game the first time, if you protect Jordan Love, you will win, because I just don't think the secondary is good enough, even without Christian Watson, frankly, to hold up down to down, play to play. And I think we saw that play out in a lot of ways. You mentioned it. It was the Packers' penalties and their own mistakes that kept them from winning the game. And so that would be if I'm going to give 3 keys to victory here.
Wow.
It would be the penalties, because last week that was a huge story. They finally get a holding penalty for Micah Parsons, and then they commit a bonehead personal foul penalty. The first field goal of the game 2 weeks ago only happens because Keyshawn Nixon gets called for a personal foul penalty, which was nonsense, by the way. And then another penalty. I think the Bears, I think they created 18 yards of offense on that drive, and it was 30 yards of penalties from the Packers, or maybe even more. So that's the other part of it, is just don't beat yourself. And I think both teams feel that way. Both teams feel like if they play their games, they're going to win. And that's what makes this fun, because it's probably the first time since 2018, at least, that both teams could say that. And I'm not even sure the 2018 could say that for the Packers.
Peter's over at Locked On Packers. Lauren's over at Locked On Bears, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When talking about the 1 p.m. slate, the Buccaneers and Panthers matchup, this takes the cake to me. This is an NFC South battle, 2 7-7 football teams. It's massive. And you have two quarterbacks in Bryce Young and Baker Mayfield who will be battling for it all this week. So you have Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and James Yarko of Locked On Bucks talking about which one of those quarterbacks will get the better of the other.
All right, keys to victory when looking at this game. And let me pull a FanDuel for a second here and look at what now FanDuel still has Tampa favored to win a division, which I'm not surprised by
a wide margin.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even I went live, James, after the Bucks lost last Thursday. I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this. And I don't typically record my Friday episodes until after the injury report comes out, because I'll go to the facility, talk to Dave one final time, get the injury report. I don't want to speculate on who's going to be there, who's not going to be. So I wait until 3 o'clock until people get it. I didn't want to leave anybody hanging because look, it was one of the most exciting things that happened in a long time around here. And even then, they still had Tampa favored. Looking at it right now, Tampa is minus 425, Carolina plus 330 to win the division this year. And then you look at the game
even over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, Tampa
look at was minus 370.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, they're leaning on Tampa. Then on Sunday, the Panthers are 3-point home favorites, which they've been underdogs all season long, and that's fine because they don't win when they're favored, which they won't be the rest of the season, whether they make the playoffs or not. Certainly will not be favored if they do make the playoffs. I know that for a fact. But yeah, man, looking at this, the keys victory for this game, what is it that Tampa has to do to end the slide and to get this win and be on the precipice where I believe if Tampa wins this, it's over for Carolina. The Bucs will win a division.
I say it just about every week, so I'm sure Locked On Bucs listeners are sick of it, but it's the basics. It's all about the basics. Run the ball, stop the run, win the turnover battle. That's what it's going to take. The Bucs had 2 different opportunities to get key takeaways against the Falcons that could have won them the game, and instead they allowed the Falcons to get a second chance, and the Falcons took advantage both times. The Panthers get takeaways in bunches, and if Carolina wins the turnover battle, pack it up. It's over. So if you're losing the turnover battle and falling behind, that's going to allow Carolina to run the ball more, which is exactly what Bucs fans don't want to see. And then it's going to put the Bucs in situations where they're one-dimensional. That's when an opportunistic defense like Carolina is going to take advantage by either bringing Baker down for sacks or taking the ball away even more than they already have. So the Bucs have been in this situation each of the last 4 years where they're having to win late in the season to secure the division. Unlike those seasons, they are not going on a run at this stage. Usually they've been on a winning streak at this point in time. They're not. They're still trending down. So the winner of this game is going to win the division. It may not be a mathematical certainty, but it will absolutely be whoever wins this game. I can't see the Bucs losing 3 straight division games and then winning back-to-back against the Dolphins and the Panthers to snatch the division away in week 18. So this is the season. Do the little things right, and you're going to be okay. Do what you've been doing, and you're going to see your former offensive coordinator crowned as the head coach of the NFC South Division champion Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's can't forget about that element of this. Yeah, for Carolina, I agree. The turnovers are going to matter. And talking to Nick Scott, the starting safety on Wednesday, he mentioned that when we were talking to him in the locker room, that turnovers, that's so huge. And they had gotten 6 of them in the games against San Francisco and against the Rams. The Rams one, that especially was such a big thing for them. And then when they beat Green Bay earlier this season. There were turnovers in that game that favored Carolina as well. So I think they've only lost one time this season when they've won the turnover battle. And they've also won twice when they have lost the turnover battle, which is actually crazy that's even been able to happen. It hadn't happened in like a decade that they had lost turnover battle in like 2 games, in back-to-back games, and then won both of those games. So yeah, they got to take care of the ball because they just cannot allow themselves to get behind the 8 ball in this game. You got to be able to find a way to run the ball, which they have been able to do effectively in some weeks, but they didn't do it last Sunday, didn't do it at all against New Orleans. And this is an opportunity to do that, especially after Atlanta had some success last Thursday against this Tampa team. And then you just got to be mature, man. Your back's against the wall. You've been doing this all season long. It feels like it's time to grow up and go take care of business. So we'll see if they can do that. And you talk about it as far as the winner of this game and the loser of this game. As far as like the stakes, we know they're enormous. If Carolina wins this week, they get Seattle next week. Without a pass rush, I have a hard time thinking they're going to beat that team. And also, let's just go off the fact that they can't handle success. So, of course, they're going to lose. But Sam, it will be a big pressure spot for him. He has just not done well at all. He's soloed himself every single time that's happened in his career. So I can't ignore that. But Jackson Smith-Njigba was awesome. That defense has been great. I just don't see Carolina beating them next week, even if it's a 10 a.m. body clock game for Seattle. So for Carolina, it's going to have to come down to winning on Sunday and then winning in week 18. Now, I do disagree. We talked about this before the show as far as Tampa goes. If Tampa loses this game, because I don't think Carolina, with the win or a loss, I don't think they're going to beat Seattle next week regardless. Now, I didn't think they're going to beat the Rams. Certainly didn't think they're going to beat the Packers. So I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong. I'll be happily wrong again and have week 18 matter. I would love for that to be the case. But like if Tampa wins this, it's basically over for Carolina because unless Tampa is going to lose, I mean, I don't think it even matters if they lose to Miami at that point in time because they would still, if they lose to Carolina, they're both 9-8. That's barring if the Panthers even beat the Seahawks. They're both 9-8, 3-3 in the division. There's no head-to-head. The division record is 3-3, and then Tampa has a common opponent. So if Tampa wins this week, they win a division. That unless just and you think that they could lose to Miami. Quinn Ewers,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's Quinn Ewers. God love him. He's not going to be the starting quarterback. And there's plenty of people out there like Quinn Ewers should stay in college and get the bag. Well, he's going to be starting the final 3 games in the NFL. So congrats, Quinn Ewers, for making it to this spot. I just have a hard time believing that Quinn Ewers in the Miami Dolphins, who have said, we're punting on the rest of the season, at least on Tua, I have a hard time believing Tampa is going to lose that game. But you believe that's still a possibility.
Oh, 100%, because you don't need Tua to beat the Bucs. You don't need a quarterback that can air it out to Jalen Waddle or a quarterback that has to sit in the pocket for 3 or 4 seconds and diagnose the defense in front of him. You have Devon Achane. Like that's first and foremost, that's pretty much all you need is Devon Achane. Running the ball, catching the ball, just Devon Achane. But on top of that, you and I could line up under center for the Miami Dolphins and dump it off 3 yards to Darren Waller and just let him do his thing through the middle of the Bucs defense because the middle of the Bucs defense is always open. That's why I brought up Tommy Tremble. Like that dude's going to go for 100 and all it's going to be is checkdowns and he's going to be able to turn and run untouched for 8 to 10 yards. So yeah, I going on the road against a Dolphins team that, I mean, they've won 4 of their last 5. So even though they're moving on from Tua, and maybe this is just Mike McDaniel throwing a Hail Mary to try to save his job, which I don't think he's going to be able to do. Until the Bucs show me that they're a competent football team on this side of their bye week, anybody can beat them. Titans.
Yeah. And I guess, look, that's 4 of 5. And those, I mean, they beat the Bills, which was insane. And they beat the Commanders. They beat a Saints team that neither one of these teams could beat the last 2 weeks. And of course, they beat the Jets before not looking great against the Steelers. Obviously Tampa far better than I do. I have not watched every Bucs game. I'll put my hand up and admit that. I don't have time to watch every Bucs game.
Sure.
But I think that from what I've seen from Miami and the times I've watched them, I just feel like Tampa, even if they lose this game, as hard as it would, yes, it sounds ridiculous because that would be a further of the slide they've been on. I give Tampa far greater of a chance of coming back from this loss and winning the division because they have the tiebreaker. If they didn't have the tiebreaker, then it'd be a little bit different. But because they have a tiebreaker, especially, and that Carolina has to play Seattle next week. If they were playing, I guess, Arizona now, and I know they lost Arizona back in week 2, but they were playing Arizona right now next week, then I'd feel a lot better about Carolina potentially winning that game. And also the Panthers had demonstrated at any point this season that they could handle success after getting a big win, which this would be. It may not be the same level of a team like Green Bay or like LA, but it would be a huge win for them. They have shown time and time again they cannot handle success, even when they played teams like the New Orleans Saints, who were a 1-win and a 3-win team when they had faced them, and a team that had just come off of a big win the week prior against a Bucs team. So I don't know, man. I think it's it for Carolina if they don't win on Sunday. And from my seat, at least, I still think that Tampa would have a chance if they lose because they have the tiebreaker. And, of course, they'd have the home game there in Week 18. So for the Panthers, win on Sunday, win in Week 18. For Tampa, I think you can still bounce back. That's just my thought. But, James knows y'all way better than I do. Any closing thoughts, James, before we get out of here?
Never underestimate the team that invented losing.
Oh, boy. And you did say something earlier about the coolest coach in the history of the NFL. I was like, wasn't Steve Spurrier was there in Tampa once upon a time with John McKay, right? He was a pretty cool guy, like Todd Bowles.
Oh, well, I said Bowles was the calmest. Not the coolest.
Okay.
The coolest coach in Bucs history is got to be Bruce Arians, right? Like Bruce is the epitome of cool.
Yeah.
No, Todd is just the most calm.
Yeah.
But
the old ball coach is calm every once in a while.
Yeah.
He's Stone advisor, so maybe not. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this plays out. Of course, would have rather this be Carolina going for all the marbles. And if they fell, then Week 18 would be a huge game. And I'm still hoping that Week 18 becomes, I don't know if you want to stay up for Sunday night, but I'd love for that to be the Sunday night game. And yeah, for that to happen, Carolina will need to win this game on Sunday in all likelihood for that to be the case. So we'll see how it plays out.
James is over at Locked On Bucks. Julian's over at Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Chargers and the Cowboys face off. The Chargers looking good. The Cowboys coming off of a tough loss to the Minnesota Vikings. So you have Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys and David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers talking about if the Cowboys can make something happen or if the Chargers will keep rolling along.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. All right, David, let's start with the Cowboys here. For the Cowboys to win this game, they're going to have to play very clean football. They cannot afford to turn the ball over, give the Chargers short fields. We know how many problems the Chargers have had kind of going the length of the field in recent weeks. You can't give them free points. You've got to play a clean game. You've got to create pressure on Justin Herbert. There was a game a couple of weeks ago. He was pressured on like 48% of his dropbacks. I don't think you're going to get to that number, but you've got to make him feel uncomfortable. And then you need Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens to play like superstars, and they need to be able to outduel Justin Herbert. And that's been a problem this year. Not that Dak hasn't played well. He's got a passer rating of like 100 this year, but opposing quarterbacks have a passer rating of 109 against the Cowboys this year. Dak's going to need to be flawless. They can absolutely do it. Like there's times where this offense gets so hot that I don't think anybody in the league can stop them. Will that be this week? We'll see.
Yeah, no question. It's going to be a very interesting challenge. I think for me, starting with my first key to success or key to victory here for the Chargers is you got to win the battle of the red zone. Against a high-scoring team like this, you're going to give up yards, but you got to keep them out of the end zone to win. The Cowboys were held to 2 of 5 in the red zone last week, under 42% red zone touchdown percentage over the last three weeks, which ranks 26th in the NFL. The Chargers have had their own offensive struggles all season in the red zone. They have not really been able to run the ball in red zone either. 30th in touchdown red zone scoring percentage there. And as far as Dallas, they're giving up quite a bit in the red zone. They're 30th in the NFL, giving up a red zone touchdown percentage of over 72%, and it's over 80% the last 3 games. So it has been a huge problem for them. And the Chargers have been 5th best in the league at preventing touchdowns, allowing only 51.16% touchdowns allowed whenever opponents get in the red zone. They've been able to get there, but they have not had a lot of success being able to punch it in. So the team that's going to be able to prevent touchdowns and score touchdowns when you get there is going to be the team that wins the game.
Really quickly, just for the stakes of this game, the Cowboys aren't going to make the playoffs, but I do think Brian Schottenheimer is really going to try to get that first winning season. They could get to 9-7-1 if they win their final 3 games, and that's the Chargers, the Commanders on Christmas Day against Marcus Mariota, and then the Giants to finish the season. But for the Chargers, just how important is this game? Because to me, it certainly feels like they're going to be in the playoffs. They've already had 10 wins. They're going to win at least one more game, but in terms of seeding, how important is this game for LA?
Well, the division is still available to them. If the Jaguars beat the Broncos on Sunday and the Chargers win out, including beating the Broncos in the last game of the season, they will win the AFC West because they are 5-0 in the AFC West so far this year. They're 8-2 in the AFC Conference. They have been truly phenomenal so far in conference play. So this is a big game. Like they still have everything that they want in front of them. The Chargers have not won the AFC West since 2009. Like we're talking about 16 years here until they've done that. This game is very important because they still want to do that. Like Jim Harbaugh was brought in to win games, win division titles, win playoff games, and ultimately win a Super Bowl championship. So the fact that they still have the opportunity to do that means that they have to show up, and this game is still very important.
Well, and we should also mention, right now they are the 5 seed. They play the Texans next week. If you would happen to lose to Houston next week, there's a chance that you could be the 7th seed. I mean, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the 7th seed playing like in New England in round 2 is a whole lot less appealing than playing Pittsburgh with, a team that you've already beaten and kind of beat up on them by a lot. The Steelers present their own problems, but I would think being the 5 seed is way more advantageous than being the 7th seed in the AFC.
No question about it. I mean, who wants to travel to Foxborough in December and play football out there? Nobody.
January, yeah.
Yeah, in January, nobody. I mean, that's not a fun place to play. So, and also an opponent that you don't really know what to expect, right? I mean, Drake May has had a great year. That offense is humming. The defense has, they've had a cake schedule. Like I think we can all agree and admit.
But there's a chance that's Buffalo. There's a chance that you could be going to Buffalo. The Bills are not out of it as well.
I would much rather go against an immobile quarterback than a mobile quarterback. That's for sure. I mean, if you can go up against an Aaron Rodgers where they've already terrorized and they already beat, quite easily, then yeah, absolutely sign me up for that. No question about it. I mean, I want that matchup. That's a matchup that would favor the Chargers. And for Justin Herbert, the one thing that has always plagued him has been his lack of success in the playoffs. So if they can get him teed up for a playoff victory, obviously that will help, but the goalposts, they always continue to change. It would just be, okay, now let's go to the title game. It's okay, now get a championship. So it never ends, right? And it never will until they win that Lombardi. But I think for me, the next key for me on offense, or at least, to win this game, is to maintain that balance on offense. Last game against the Chiefs, they had 29 runs and 29 passes. And during the Chargers 3-game winning streak, they run the ball more times than they've thrown the ball, which I think is a great indication of their success and being able to keep the ball away from opposing offenses. The Cowboys defense ranks 29 in total yards allowed, which is basically dead last in the NFL. And they've also dead last in passing yards allowed with 254.8. So there's an opportunity here to find some balance. And if they do, that's going to bode well for them going into the playoffs.
You can find David over on Locked On Chargers. You can find Marcus over on Locked On Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up, more 1 p.m. action to dive into in Week 16 across the NFL. Stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams, for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. And the seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat. before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Gametime. Moving along here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you, diving into all of Week 16's NFL action. And thanks so much for making Locked On and the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And if you're a true diehard fan of your team, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you in the Everydayer Club. You'll get one-on-one access with your host in terms of text, also all access episodes, and exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount through the Locked On merch store. So head to the Locked On website, find your team's URL to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the description down below. Let's keep rolling along with these 1 p.m. slated games here. Week 16, Bills and Browns. Let's resume there. Josh Allen and Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback matchup. The Bills coming off a huge win against the Patriots, and the Browns, I think they've found some positives for next season, but obviously this season in playoffs, that's not something that's going to happen. So Joe Marino of Locked On Bills and Spencer Drummond of Locked On Browns take you through keys to victory and so much more.
Spencer German, Locked On Browns, Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, as we give you some final thoughts leading into the Browns and Bills matchup coming on down the pike this weekend here in Cleveland. And Joe, we sort of, the one thing we sort of avoided in the key matchup conversation was Shedeur Sanders' role in kind of all this. And I think you sort of laid out a very good point there before the break, just the idea that if the Bills can get the Browns chasing a little bit, it probably spells a good day for them overall. And I think that's very true. For me, I think any path to victory for the Browns on Sunday, honestly, it kind of starts with whether or not like the Bills come in with sort of like a lackadaisical attitude to this game. And sometimes that happens, right? Like off of a high win, you just beat the Patriots to get back in the division race, all those different things. Sometimes teams come in a little bit flat. I'm not anticipating that's going to happen because I think the Bills understand they just got back into that division conversation. They don't want to let up now. They want to kind of keep their foot on the gas. But if they come in sleepwalking at all, that could help the Browns a little bit. But I think any path for the Browns to win this game starts with maybe the Bills taking them a little bit more lightly than they probably should.
I think it's a fair call out, Spencer. I would like to think that the Bills, knowing what's at stake in this game, wouldn't do that. And I think there's been times where you could probably say that's happened. The Bills really, they're a really good December team. I think they have like a 26-4 record in December going back to like the last 4 years. They really do kind of focus in and handle their business. I'm not saying it's above them to take this game lightly and not do what they need to do to win it. But I'd like to think that the leadership and where this team's been, it's a battle-tested team, right? It's not a team that hasn't paid its dues. It has plenty of scars. And so I think that they will take this very, very seriously. And that's why like my top key is you've got to go out there and be aggressive and try to invite Cleveland to a track meet. Yeah, I think that's what you have to do. And I think you'll like where that goes. And Spencer, I can only imagine the world of covering Shedeur Sanders as the quarterback from, the draft through all of it, right? It's just been a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions. We can cut through the noise and talk about it. Since he's taken over as a starting quarterback the last 4 weeks, there certainly was a high against Tennessee, but if we're being honest, collectively, it's been pretty poor. And we're talking about a day 3 rookie quarterback in an offense where the structure has not been very sound. So I don't necessarily think that it's been a great opportunity for Shedeur to come out and like really showcase himself, especially as a guy that hasn't taken the first team reps until recently. Like ideally he would have had an entire offseason kind of building towards this and this infrastructure, and they'd be keenly aware of kind of what he is as a player and how to maximize that. So I think you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but let's be honest. I mean, over the last 4 weeks among starting quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders is 30th in turnover-worthy throw rate. He's 29th in catchable ball rate. He's 31st in completion percentage over expectation. He throws to his first read only 54% of the time. That's 30th. His average time to throw is 3.17 seconds. That's the slowest trigger in the league. He's pressured on 50% of his dropbacks. That's the third highest. Like it's not really sound. And so if the Bills can get them in a position where they're one-dimensional and that one dimension is throwing the football, the Bills are going to have a really good chance to take care of their business.
Yeah, and I think that, that as we're talking past the victory, that's why I think the run game for both these teams really is kind of the essential piece here. I mentioned some of the struggles of Quinshon Judkins, especially the last couple of weeks. If they can actually have success doing that, I think that sets Shedeur up for better success. I think that sets the offense up as a whole for better success. But I don't necessarily trust that that's going to happen because the offensive line is so banged up. They've dealt with so many injuries. Guys are constantly in and out of that thing. It seems like Wyatt Teller is trending in the right direction towards potentially being back out there, and so that would be a step in the right direction, I think, for this group. But even he has taken some steps back, I think, this year in terms of his play. So it's just been a mess. Like I think it all starts there for the Browns on offense. But you bring up a huge point when it comes to Shedeur. Like there's the way I would describe it is, there's been a lot of Shedeur's clearly at a point right now where he's still learning and developing in real time and trying to become a better player,
right? Like
normal,
reasonable, yes, absolutely.
for sure. But the thing that I think has been intriguing is that there's some moments or there's some throws. Last week, he hit 2 big ones to Isaiah Bond deep down the field. And honestly, one of the balls that became an interception for him in that Chicago game was this beautiful pass to Jerry Jeudy. It was probably one of the best throws he's thrown since he took over as the starter. And Jerry just could not bring it in, let it slip through his hands. And then Jalen Johnson ends up with an interception in the end zone to sort of stall a drive. Like, there's been these moments where you're like, okay, this guy can make those big, high-level throws at this level. And then you see some of the regression of, him not necessarily recognizing that there's some simulated cover or simulated blitz, and then a guy drops into coverage and he throws it right to him for a pick. So those are the things he's still working through. But I agree with you. Like if the Bills make this, if the Bills run defense shows up and can stop that, like many teams in the previous weeks have done, and they put it on Shedeur Sanders to win this game, it's going to be game over pretty quickly here if that's what this turns into.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Bills have to make a commitment to it, right? Well, whatever it is, extra guys in the box, play heavy, whatever you have to do to make sure that Cleveland doesn't have that rhythm running the football, that has to be at the forefront of what the Bills try to get done. Another thing here I want to get into with the Bills is, I think they got to protect Josh Allen in this game. I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about Myles Garrett. He's a freak of freaks. And obviously the pass rush, that conversation is Myles Garrett. But this is a team in Cleveland that's number 1 in pressure rate in the league. They're number 2 in pressure rate over expectation. They're number 1 in sack rate. Of course, Myles Garrett has a lot to do with that. But there's other good players. Mason Graham's a really good young player. I like Isaiah McGuire. I've been a big fan of him since I scouted him at Missouri. Alex Wright is a freak of his own in his own way. No, not quite the Myles Garrett, but he's a good player. Shelby Harris is a good interior rusher. Cam Thomas has provided some juice in a sub role. And so you can obviously focus on Myles Garrett, and you should. There's other players here that can affect things. And so making sure that Josh Allen remains upright in this game, absolutely paramount if the Bills are going to go anywhere this year.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And you name off a lot of those guys. I can tell you, like, Malik Collins has been sorely missed. The last week in particular, he was such a huge addition for them, and he was part of what made that defensive line so dominant and be able to get so much pressure. I think that's an area that the Bills can sort of exploit, not having him out there. The last thing I'll say in terms of path to victory, this is one of those games where I think the Browns are going to need as clean a special teams game as they can possibly get. And by the way, that is nobody's expecting that, because the Browns special teams have been some of, if not the worst in the league this year. And it's constant. It's, first play of the game against the Bears last week, a 52-yard return by the Bears to set them up with a short field. And they didn't score on that drive, but because they punted down at the 1, that just set everything in motion for this really rough start that gets them eventually down 14-0, and it's already an insurmountable lead. And I think back to that Packers game that they sort of stole early in the season. They only pulled that off because special teams played like a perfect game. And I've started to bring this up more and more week over week, that if the Browns expect to win some of these games, they need their special teams to show up. It's a tough ask because they haven't done it to this point. There's things that need corrected, and they just don't get corrected. But that's going to be another point in this game that I think could really flip it one way or another. If they play perfect on special teams, then they give themselves at least a fighting chance. But if they're giving up big returns and things like that to the Bills, on top of what the Bills can do offensively, I think it's probably game over.
Well, Ray Davis has come along well for the Bills in the kick return game. I actually think he's number 1 in the league in kick return average. It's been a nice revelation, but the Bills are about to be on their 3rd kicker of the year.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not available. They had to sign Michael Badgley off the street to come in and get through this game. Their punt return game really hasn't been there. Their punt coverage has been solid, and so that's definitely an area where obviously you want to win all the phases of the game. And so We'll see how that goes. But that kick return opportunity for Buffalo could be notable. That's something that they've had a strength. Spencer, the last thing from me in terms of my keys to victory for the Bills is don't beat yourself. Right, the Bills are capable of beating themselves. They've done it. They've taken losses this year to Tua. They've taken 30-13 to the Dolphins. To Michael Penix, right? Not a high. I mean, he's been horrible. Right, if we're being honest. Davis Mills, a backup quarterback with Houston, all 3 games on the road. Like, it's totally within the realm of possibilities for the Bills to beat themselves, have some goofy penalties, have some goofy giveaways on offense, and you give teams life. And obviously, this is a Browns team that's coming in as heavy road or home underdogs. You know, you keep them in it. You know, it can be dangerous, and the Bills have to be careful to not beat themselves. Something that they've proven able to do in the past.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the top of what I said, right? Like if the Bills show up and they're sort of lackadaisical and they think, oh, we're just going to be able to beat this team easily, I think that does open the door a little bit for the Browns to potentially pull this one off and steal one, and that would be huge because with a lot of talk right now in Cleveland about, you know, future of Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and all those things, pulling off a win against the Bills would be a potentially a way to sort of save jobs and whatnot. So we'll see.
Spencer's over on Locked On Browns. Joe is over on Locked On Bills, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Chiefs and Titans. Titans, we know that they're playing for next season, and now so are the Chiefs as they are eliminated from the postseason in Week 15, and Patrick Mahomes torn ACL, LCL done for the season. Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans and Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs take it through keys to victory, key matchups, key storylines, and so much more.
All right, once again, Locked On Titans, Locked On Chiefs, crossover Thursday. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. But we go through the storylines, we go through the matchups, we get to kind of the keys to victory here. Chris, I know that you're not hankering for a Chiefs win, and the fan base may not be looking for one, but if you think they pull this out without Patrick Mahomes, what does it look like?
No turnovers. That's number one. Kansas City's turned the ball over way too many times this year. And like, I know we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes in this game, but a great example, they could have won that Chargers game last week. If you go back and watch the end of the game, I think the second to last drive for the Chiefs, Mahomes, they have the ball in the red zone. Mahomes throws a ball up that is not even a 50-50 ball, and he's throwing it up to Kareem Hunt. And there's no reason to make that throw when it's third down in the red zone. Like, you're down 3 points. If you want to throw it, make that throw it way over their heads so it's not intentional grounding, and be done with it, kick the field goal, tie the game, and who knows what happens after that. Just don't turn the ball over. I mean, that is eating Kansas City's lunch the entire season with turnovers, and they're not able to get turnovers. So that's the problem. Like, if you were losing the turnover battle constantly because you, one, don't turn the ball over, don't get turnovers on defense, and you can't stop turning the ball over on offense, it's not and the other problem is part of the Chiefs' turnover issues hasn't been Mahomes. There's been multiple times this year where he's hit wide receivers or tight ends in the hands that they get knocked over to the other team. That's not on Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, it's on his stat sheet, but that's not on Patrick Mahomes. So is that going to happen in this game with a different quarterback? We'll see. To me, if you can stop the running game and, make it all Cam Ward, I think that you have a chance. And it's not that I don't think that Cam Ward could be a good quarterback. I do think that he has value, and I do think that he could be a good quarterback. But the reality is he's got to learn the NFL game, and I will take Steve Spagnuolo against a rookie QB every day of the week and twice on Sundays. No offense to Cam Ward.
100%. I don't think it's unfair to say that. And let's add the context that Titans fans are always trying to remind folks of. Look at the group of wide receivers. The 3 biggest touchdown scorers on the Titans this year are 3 fourth-round rookies. Like, their best weapons are all fourth-round rookies, whether it's Gunnar Helm at tight end or Chim DK and Alec Ioman at wide receiver. Van Jefferson is their other big-time wide receiver. So it's like, he doesn't have a lot to help him out when it comes to blitzing, playing man coverage behind it. Like that's been a kryptonite for the Titans all year because they just don't have guys that are going to get open consistently or win contested situations consistently. It's just going to be tough. So for me, it's all about having answers to pressure. The Titans, in my opinion, have done a poor job of giving Cam Ward an outlet when teams do bring pressure, and Kansas City is going to blitz a ton to do exactly what you're saying. They're going to try to confuse Cam Ward. They're going to try to put him under pressure so that he makes mistakes. I think that dealing with the pressure of Kansas City's blitz attack is going to be key for the Titans, but you're right on turnovers. Like, if the Titans lose the turnover battle, it doesn't really matter. And on the flip side, the Titans have to get pressure on Gardner Minshew and force him into mistakes because the game is just going to be moving fast because he hasn't been playing for a while. Like, that has to be the key.
I will argue a little bit that I don't know that they're like, I expect they're going to blitz, to be clear. I do think that the Chiefs will blitz, but I also think they're going to make it look like they're going to blitz and fall out. I think that that's one of the biggest things that they're going to do to use to their advantage. They're going to make it look like they're sending everybody, and then you're going to have 4 guys fall out. And is Cam Ward going to pick the right place to go with the ball, or is he going to throw it to some place that those 4 guys vacated to? That's going to be the big question.
See, and the thing is, it goes more than that. Like I said, the Titans' pass catchers are all rookies. And we focus so much on quarterback because it's easy to see, and you can look at the quarterback and know what he did. But when pressure comes, wide receivers have to adjust. They have to adjust their route to the timing of the pressure. They have to be ready to turn around and catch the ball and understand, hey, I'm not going to be open. They're not going to get me the ball at this point in my route because there's a pressure on. I'm going to have to turn and look at this point in my route. And all of those, like, different gears that turn together, very rarely have the Titans been on the same page with that.
Hot routes and whether or not you can identify whether or not a blitz is coming and actually and you take it a step further. You talk about the QB being able to identify if there's a blitzer coming or not. If the wide receivers look at it and say, okay, there's a blitz, I have to run my hot route, and then there's not a blitz, then they're not where the QB expects them to be, and that causes a whole different issue. So, I mean, it's a give and take, and like, you don't see it. You put so much on the QB, but it's not always the QB, and that does play a huge part in how this is going to shake out. And like I said, like, I think Cam Ward can be a good quarterback. I've been impressed by some of the games he's had, but his first year in the NFL and Spags against a rookie QB, I'll take that just every day. And this defense has a few injuries, but it's not like their offense.
Yeah, it hasn't been struggling quite as much as the offense has had its ups and downs. No, that's completely fair. Spags is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. You would think he would make life living hell for a rookie quarterback, especially a rookie quarterback. And we're talking coaching. I think part of my complaint is not just that you have rookie wide receivers and a rookie quarterback trying to do these things. It's that the coaching staff hasn't really given them good answers for the test. So when you don't even have the answer available to the problem you're being presented, it makes it even tougher. But with coaching on the mind, Chris, I do want to kind of get us out of here on this. Matt Nagy continues to be connected to the Tennessee Titans whenever you hear reports, rumors about the coaching search, anything like that. Obviously, Mike Borgonzi in his time in Kansas City, they were said to have a good connection, so that's why people are connecting the dots on that. In your opinion, as someone who has seen Matt Nagy go, come back, all that, do you think that he can be a good NFL head coach, and do you think that he's earned another opportunity with what he's done in Kansas City?
No, I personally
agree
don't.
with you. Yeah,
I think, and it's going to be hard for anybody that's ever an OC under Andy Reid, because Andy Reid calls the plays. He may let the offensive coordinator do a couple of things, but Andy Reid is calling most of the plays. I haven't seen it from Matt Nagy, and the other problem is, while I don't think that you can go back to a guy like Eric Bieniemy, because I just think that there was too many clashes, it seemed like, in the coaching staff with Bieniemy. You look at this Chiefs offense and you look at some of the things that have gone wrong this year, and you wonder, should Matt Nagy take a little bit of a bigger part of the blame for that?
Yes.
So in some ways, I would argue, do I think he deserves another head coaching job? No. But I would be happy if he got one. And I would be happy if he got one, because that would mean Kansas City would be looking for a new offensive coordinator. But I think the Chiefs need to be looking at maybe rehauling everything under the offense outside of Andy Reid, because you start looking at some of their offensive coaches, and like, you've got Andy Heck that's been doing offensive line for I don't know how many years, but he's been in Kansas City the entire time with with Reed, this offensive line has talent. They have some very good players, but the scheme is horrible. And it every single year, it just seems to struggle. So to me, I think that they need to look at getting new coaches, and maybe Nagy going out would be a way to do that. The bigger problem for Kansas City, though, and I know you want to focus on Nagy, but the bigger problem for Kansas City, Andy Reid generally goes with his own guys. So if Nagy leaves, he probably promotes somebody from within, which probably not going to be a great scenario.
Yeah,
but
doesn't solve anything.
You have a former wide receiver as your running backs coach. Todd Pinkston is the running back coach. Like, none of that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That doesn't line up, but I'm with you on Nagy. I'll be honest with you, Chris. I set that question up to you to be fair, but I am so out on Matt Nagy. I think that, like, he's an offensive guy whose offenses has really struggled. He doesn't really strike me as a guy who is going to inspire and, like, get the Titans don't just need a good coach. They need a great leader to inspire a whole building and get this going back in the right direction. And I just don't think Matt Nagy is the guy for that. And I know a lot of people in Kansas City have had frustration with him. And it's like, you don't hire this guy coming off the worst offensive seasons that he's been with Kansas City. Like, that's the opposite. You need to go get somebody who has proven in recent years that they are up with the trends and they can make the offense work. I'm with you there. And that kind of confirms my concerns with Nagy as a candidate.
And I look at it from this perspective. I think that if you go back and, like, Nagy has pretty good experience as a QB coach, and I think that he'd be a fine QB coach.
True.
But he's not going to take a step back. So he can't be a QB coach in Kansas City. That's the problem. Yeah. And can he go get a head coaching gig somewhere? Maybe. But why would you look at – here's my question on that. I could make an argument that the Chiefs' offense should have been putting up 30 to 35 points a game. Like,
exactly.
You look at the players they had on this roster. This roster should have just absolutely hammered most teams.
Mm-hmm.
When you start talking about Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, I mean, those are just your wide receivers. Then you throw in Travis Kelce, and I know your running backs aren't great, but it just underperformed all year long, and I don't know that there's really a good answer other than it kind of goes back to what we talked about early in the show. Like, you look at this team and you watch them play, and I'll be very curious to see how they come out on Sunday, because Reed was very clear that they are evaluating for 2026. And they're evaluating not only the players, but the coaches too. So that is going to make it very interesting to me to see how this team comes out against the Titans, because if they come out flat, that says a lot about what they're going to need to do. If they come out fired up, I'm not going to like that they're going to win. That they're probably going to, like, lead to a win, but at least they can still motivate guys. But they have to get the young players on their roster some snaps and see what they can do, because they have a lot of decisions to make for 2026. They're $40 million over the salary cap right now.
Yeah. Yep.
With 35 players under contract.
It's a tough spot to be in. I know for Titans fans, they're like, oh, yeah, it's so tough to be the Chiefs, but they are in a tough spot to kind of turn this thing back around. It's going to be very interesting to see how things play out on Sunday. I do think at minimum, this last 3 games for the Chiefs might be time to evaluate some of the coaches. That might be a good time to do that with a pared down roster and a little pared down talent.
Chris is over at Locked On Chiefs, and Tyler's over at Locked On Titans, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk Bengals and Dolphins now, 2 teams that are also, their playoff chances. Nope, not going to happen. So James Rapine of Locked On Bengals and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins take you through keys to victory in this game and what the outlook is for both teams heading into this one.
Back here on this crossover Thursday, Locked On Bengals, Locked On Dolphins, Sunday, 1 o'clock, flexed out of the primetime slot. James, you joked about it already, but especially on the heels of Monday night last week, I was like, thank goodness. 1 o'clock kick, not mad about it. I could go on the rest of my evening after we finish the post-game stuff, and we will have you covered on Locked On Bengals, Locked On Dolphins in the immediate aftermath of the game, and, of course, another show tomorrow on Friday to get you guys ready for this kickoff. Only a few games left this season. We got to cherish each one of them we have, no matter what is or isn't on the line. James, I'd ask you, what's your biggest key to victory from the Bengals lens coming into this game?
It's got to be Joe. And it's weird to say, and I do expect him to bounce back, but you still need to see it. And we'll know pretty early on. But are you getting the Joe that for 3 quarters went into Buffalo and felt like he was the best player on the field? And Josh Allen was awesome that game as well. And are you getting that? Or are you getting what we've seen over the past 5 quarters, which is shaky at best, and a guy who's had multiple pick sixes and a bunch of interceptions and mental mistakes? And so, yeah, it starts there. If Joe Burrow is the Joe that we usually are and we're used to seeing here in Cincinnati, well, then I think they're going to have a shot, not just against Miami, but maybe they do send everybody home happy and win the next 3 and go that route. But it certainly starts with Joe and him playing at a really high level. And he needs to be, shocker, the best player on the field. The Bengals are built around him for a reason. And so I think that's certainly the key for the Bengals to get a victory. What about you when you look at the Miami side, the number one thing for them to put the Pittsburgh loss in the past?
Yeah, I think they need to do what they did not do against Pittsburgh, which is they had some early success running the ball, some early flashes, and it just felt like we wanted to continue to just throw the passes in there, and it kind of led to a clunky offensive operation where you had 90 yards offense through 3 quarters. It was like, oh, you're not going to win any football games if you play like this offensively. So they've had so much success running the football. I think the young quarterback compound or it only further multiplies that, but then also through the lens of you want to keep Cincinnati's offense and Joe Burrow off the field. You want to play the time of possession game in a game against a top flight quarterback. You want to dictate the flow of the game. You want to limit the possessions, right? If you go 60 minutes and every team gets 12 possessions, what's the likelihood that across 12 possessions, Quinn Ewers is going to make more mistakes that are potentially turnover worthy plays than what Joe Burrow is, versus if you mitigate that and it's 9 possessions each because the clock is running more. I think that has to be front of mind for Miami in this game to make sure they're properly managing the flow of the game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it was weird. Last week was weird because the Bengals were in control and had the time of possession. And like Lamar Jackson was only 12. Yeah. Like Lamar was 8 of 12. Derrick Henry only ran the ball 11 times. It was just such an odd game where the Bengals had the ball in Ravens territory and scoring range multiple times. And for one reason or another, turnovers, bad sacks, etc., they didn't score. And you look up and a defensive breakdown here and there, and suddenly it's 14-0. And the Bengals should have probably been up at least 10-0 early in that game. So yeah, the time of possession element of it, in theory, certainly is something that the Dolphins, if you're the Dolphins, you want to win, because I really do. I think Joe is going to play better. And obviously Jamar put up monster numbers last week, even though it wasn't a great game for him. He had multiple drops. I think that these skill guys are going to want to rise up and play better for Joe as well, because you could probably say 6 drops last week if you want to be critical, at least 5 that could have potentially changed the game, especially early on.
Yeah. Another key to victory for me is generating turnovers in a responsible way, where you could tell the Dolphins defense, you got in the second half of the game against Pittsburgh and they said, oh, the offense isn't going to do anything for us, guys, so we got to try to make some plays. They do so in a way in which they're trying to attack the football, and it came at the expense of tackling with their technique. And the last time they'd had a really ugly game in yards after contact, both in the run game and the pass game like that, was against Carolina, where Carolina tagged them for nearly 250 yards on the ground because they'd had this big preaching point of emphasis about attacking the football. Well, they're trying to punch the ball out, and they haven't secured the ball carrier yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so you look at Cincinnati, and going back to the game against Chicago before the bye, 3 turnovers, 2 turnovers, a turnover, 2 turnovers, 2 turnovers. They've given the ability for a team to take the ball away across the last 6 games that they've played. Now, Cincinnati's defense has also generated at least 1 turnover in their last 4 games, and they turned the Ravens over 5 times because the Ravens have poor ball security on Thanksgiving. So that element of it, it's always low-hanging fruit to talk about like time of possession and turnover differential, but especially in a game like this one, with what the trends have been and how you saw the downside of it for Miami by trying to irresponsibly go about getting turnovers, I think it's a big piece for Miami in this game.
It is. It's a huge piece for the Bengals as well. And it is because I don't think that they're, even with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, I don't think they're going to hold Miami to 3 points. I think they're going to give up yards and they're going to give up first downs. And the Dolphins star players are going to make plays like we saw last week with the Ravens. The Ravens haven't been a good offense, and the Bengals started off pretty hot against them. And you look up and they have 14 points at halftime. And the second touchdown comes because Geno Stone isn't where he needs to be. And so Zay Flowers gets open. And so that's Jalen Waddle this week, right? Or that's Darren Waller this week. And so those defensive breakdowns, I just kind of expect them at this point. The thing that can kind of make up for it is force turnovers. The thing that you can't do if you're the Bengals is turn the ball over and put your defense in a bad spot where they're challenged to rise up again and be really what they haven't been all year, which is a reliable unit.
Any final thoughts?
Look, I think I have a feeling it should be an exciting game. I think we're going to see a decent amount of points. I expect Joe to bounce back. On the other side of it, I'm not sure this Bengals defense is going to be some lockdown unit against any NFL quarterback right now. And you look at the skill guys for Miami, really a big fan of Achane. We talked about Wright a ton pre-draft, and Locked On Bengals listeners know. So like those two guys, you lean on them. We know what Waller can be. So yeah, I think we could see a mildly high scoring game. Last I checked on FanDuel, it was 50.5 as the over under. Wouldn't be shocked if it gets to that 50 mark for sure.
Yeah, I'd take the over on that. And I think that the final thought that I have is Mike McDaniel has a chance now. The messaging behind the scenes through NFL insiders all season since the end of September was really hard for Mike to run the offense he wants to run with the limitations that Tua Tagovailoa presents from a skill set perspective and then also a durability and taking hits perspective. What else do you have in the bag, Mike? Right? Like you're at the point now where you kind of have to empty the chamber. You're 6-8, eliminated from the postseason. The owner told you last January status quo was not going to be accepted. You're 6-8 for the second consecutive season. Will not miss the playoffs for the second consecutive season. There's a whole lot of status quo going on for the Dolphins right now. So if you want to have other elements to your offense, if you want to have more of a vertical passing game, if you want to have the quarterback get out on the move more, I think it's a big variable of this game that's the X factor variable because there's no tape on it. There's no tape on running deep overs, on calling big shots down the field and throwing the ball or accessing 15 plus yards outside the numbers to the far side of the field. Like those throws, the Dolphins have run them. They ran them very often early on in the season, and we were missing all of them because Tua could not hit them. So now that you have this other skill set, Quinn doesn't have the biggest arm, but he's got more juice in his arm than what Tua does. What else do you have for us? And if you have it, now's the time to show it to inspire confidence that you should be the coach into the next iteration of the team.
And I think that just scared the heck out of Bengals fans that are hoping they leave Miami with a win, because any unknown and first time starting quarterback, it just feels like they always have the Bengals number, and the Bengals defense always gives up the game winning touchdown late. And so we'll see. But yeah, I think as you were discussing that, I'm like, man, unknowns, things that aren't on film, things that they can do that they haven't been able to do in the past. It's right up that's the recipe for success against this Bengals defense that's really flawed.
These two fan bases can bond over that as the team that first got exposed to Brock Purdy, which was the Brock Purdy debut came against the Dolphins, and he comes in and say, okay.
Mike White's only game came against the Bengals, just to give you an idea. Dolphins.
That might have been the same week, I think. I
really?
seem to remember being with a Jets fan and we were watching those games. So that might have been the same week. That'd be interesting to go back and look.
James is over at Locked On Bengals. Kyle's over at Locked On Dolphins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Vikings and Giants, two teams that are also eliminated from playoff contention. You kind of get that a lot this time of year, 3 weeks to go in the season. But the Vikings coming off that big win against the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, the Giants, they're just looking for something here. So you have Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants taking it through which team will come out on top.
We are on Crossover Thursday. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. He is Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. And Luke, what's the key to a victory? I know you said who cares at this point, but somebody's got to win. I mean, unless they end up tying, somebody's got to win. But what did the Vikings have to do, in your opinion, to pull it out?
Yeah, there's the answer for people who want to drop a FanDuel bet on this game, who want to know what the actual scoreboard will be. But I think for both of our teams, the definition of a victory might be outside of the scoreboard, which is kind of the point I've been trying to make. If Jackson Dart rips up the Vikings blitz, you guys are doing backflips, even if you lose. If you lose a shootout, right, you guys are doing backflips. You guys are going to be thrilled with that because, right, like who cares? And you get a loss, you get to keep your draft position for people who care about that. And I think it's similar for the Vikings. If JJ McCarthy looks good and the Vikings lose 30-27 because, Jackson Dart ran around a whole bunch and the Vikings have actually struggled a lot with mobile quarterbacks, then I think we're all pretty happy over here. But I will say that I would say on the defensive side, you cannot let Dart beat you with his legs. Like that is a tool, I would argue, one he uses as a crutch. That is a habit you want to break eventually. But as it stands for this matchup, he is going to try to run a lot. You cannot let that be, convert 3rd and 12 kind of thing. You cannot let that create major moments. And if you can keep that, if you can take that part of his game away and force him to do what he is uncomfortable doing, which is stand in the pocket, deliver, be on time and be a true pocket passer, then I think the Vikings can really give Jackson Dart hell. Brian Flores has been phenomenal against young quarterbacks over his time in the league everywhere, not just Minnesota. And, older, more experienced quarterbacks are the ones that have given him the most trouble. Guys that can get the ball out quickly, guys that can be, really safe with it. But when he goes up against, Justin Fields or a young Will Levis or Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels just recently, that's when things get really, really hard because those guys are just figuring out how to walk against normal defenses. And then you get this weird exotic thing. So that to me is the key for the Vikings. Can they make Jackson Dart uncomfortable, force him to make mistakes, and keep the production on the ground to a minimum? That will help no matter what happens on the other side of the ball. But for me, my priority is, does JJ McCarthy look good? If he looks good and we lose by 2 scores, I'll take it.
From a Giants perspective, and by the way, last week the pass pro by the Giants offensive line was, a little shaky. I think they gave up a little bit more pressure than what they had been doing. But from the Giants perspective, get off to a fast start. You don't want to end up in a 17-0 hole like they did against the Patriots, because now, like you said, now you're playing into the strength of the Minnesota Vikings defense, and that is that pass rush and that whole pass defense. So you don't want to lose that run element that I spoke about in the previous segment. So that's where you've got to start, I think, in terms of what the Giants need to do. But more importantly, for most of the games, the Giants, they've been competitive, but they've also been their own worst enemy. How many times have I started shows off after a game saying the New York Giants beat the New York Giants because they commit mistakes? They miss a field goal. They commit a penalty that turns a 3rd and short into a 3rd and 20, an interception on it because the receiver ran the wrong route or the quarterback made the wrong decision. These are the little mistakes. And, I've been saying it all season long with the Giants. They are not good enough right now to overcome their own mistakes. Nobody's going to play a perfect game, but the Giants, they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot. And, here's a scary thing. When it comes to pre-snap penalties, the Giants are like top 3 in pre-snap penalties on offense, which further sets them into a hole. So they've got to clean that up. There's only 3 games left. I know I've been saying this every week, it seems, for my listeners, but that's got to be number one if they want to win this game. And, again, my listeners are probably sitting there saying, no, don't win this game. Let's just tank. Let's keep the number 1 draft pick. I hear you guys, but the team doesn't hear you. They want to win this game, and they're going to do what they can to pull it out.
Yeah, and to the mistakes point, the Vikings, I wonder, I haven't looked this up in a while, but there was a long stretch where they led the league in turnovers allowed, or they were bottom of the league in turnover differential. They've had a really tough time getting turnovers. They have gone long stretches without a turnover, and then suddenly you get an explosion like the Commanders or the Bengals games. But they've really, like, the defense has had to do quite a lot of work, sometimes on short fields, because the Vikings turn the ball over themselves. And J.J. McCarthy, very unsafe with the football. Like I said, greedy, throwing it into harm's way, not to mention fumble problems. So it's a cliche, but turnovers and penalties are always, like, I always have to mention it when we get to this part of the crossover where we say what's the most important thing. Turnovers and penalties. Take care of the football, be aggressive on defense. And if you can keep it all normal, keep every snap reasonable, whether you win or you lose the rep or whatever, you'll get your fair share of them. But just keep the disasters out of it. Keep the, oh my God, what are they doing? Facing your hands kind of crap out of it. You could go toe to toe with a lot more teams than you have. That's the way I've felt about the Vikings. But in terms of predicting the game, Patricia, so I have a thing on my show every Friday of bold predictions. I ask listeners to give me a bold prediction, and if you're right, I'll donate $20 to a charity of your choice. I invite Giants fans. There's a Google Doc in the description to the show notes of any Locked On Vikings episode. I encourage Giants fans, come on down, throw one in, but I would like to invite you to make a bold prediction about this game. And if you are right, I will donate $20 to a New York area charity of your choice.
Ooh, I like that. But before I do that, just to your point about the Vikings, I did look up the turnover ratio.
Oh, yeah.
The Vikings are minus 13, which is second to last in the league, just ahead of the Jets, who are minus 17. So just to your point, I wanted to look that up because you had me curious there. They have, let me see, 9 takeaways, it looks like, and their giveaways is, let me see, I think is it 7? Yeah, I think it looks like, wait, am I reading this right? No, I'm sorry. It's for takeaways, they've got 14 and 27, I think it is. Yeah, it's 14 and 27.
Holy moly.
So
14. So they're averaging 2 giveaways a game. Good.
Pretty much. So the Giants better, hopefully they can capitalize on those turns.
You can't be the team that goes turnover free against the Vikings. That's what happened to the Cowboys.
All right, so then here's going to be my bold prediction. Maybe it's not too bold, but just playing off of that, I predict the Giants are going to have 2 takeaways in this game.
You got to go bolder. You can't.
That's the average. Oh, I can't do
go bolder.
Average.
Yeah, you can do.
How about if I go? So if I go 3, that's not bold enough, huh?
I want to push you. Go 4. Do it.
Oh man, Luke, you're killing me.
How about 3? How about net 3?
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll do that. Net 3 turnovers.
Yes.
In favor of the Giants.
And if I win, I already know which organization I want to donate to.
Amazing.
So, not that
awesome.
I haven't gotten it right yet, but you never know. There's always the first time.
The opposing host has not gotten it right yet. We haven't hit any of that. We've gotten quite a few listeners have hit one, but the crossover co-host has not hit one yet. Well, so hopefully you can be the first.
If I win, your $20 will feed quite a number of rescue dogs, because that's one of my
amazing.
Passions, so.
Love it.
Patricia's over at Locked On Giants. Luke is over at Locked On Vikings, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Jets and Saints, you guessed it, 2 teams that are eliminated from playoff contention as well. So John Butchko of Locked On Jets and Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints talk about what both these teams have to offer coming into this week, this year, and the outlook both of them have for this one.
All right, y'all, wrapping up this crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Jets and Locked On Saints, brought to you by friends over at PrizePicks, where you can download the app and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Taking a look at what it is that each of these teams needs to do to get a win. And there's a common theme, even though it's applied in a little bit of like different logic. But what's kind of the thing that you need to see, John, in order to believe that the Jets can pull off a win here? The Saints, by the way, 4.5-point favorites at home, according to our friends over at FanDuel for this one.
I think for the Jets, the compete level needs to be higher. I don't like to question how hard a team's competing because, these guys' livelihoods are on the line each week. Bingo. And even in the
agreed.
The film you put out there is your video resume. But these last couple of weeks, I mean, there have just been moments where you've seen it. Guys are quitting on plays, especially on the defensive side of the ball for the Jets. I think you said it right. Get out of your own way. And first of all, that means, bringing intensity to every play. And I know it's a lost season. I know that it's frustrating when you fall behind. I know there's a temptation to maybe throttle things down a bit, but I think the Jets need to compete at a high level. And I think they also need to figure out what's been going wrong in the secondary. Jets fired their defensive coordinator this week, Steve Wilkes, with 3 weeks left in the season. Usually when you're 3-11, you wait till the end of the year to make a coaching change, unless you're Adam Gase, who fired Greg Williams a few weeks before he got fired after the Jets lost on a Hail Mary in 2020. And that was funny. Like, you knew that Adam Gase was getting fired anyway, so that was like the most pointless move ever. It was almost like Adam Gase did it just to show that he could do it.
Right. I'm not fired. He's fired.
Right. Well, I have this job. I can still fire you. But the Jets need to figure out their coverages. I mean, there's just basic stuff that they haven't been able to. They weren't able to execute basic coverages against Miami or Jacksonville. And Ross, I think like even if you're just like running basic cover 2 the whole game, just have guys drop to a certain point. That would be better than what the Jets are doing. Jets wouldn't give up 48 points if they were doing that, because it was unbelievable. It was almost like every single Trevor Lawrence drop back last week. There was a coverage busted. There was a guy 5 yards away from any of the defenders, and I think the Jets also just need to be smarter with their personnel. On the offensive side of the ball, they're designing a lot of touches in space for John Mechie, who's they acquired part of the Michael Carter II trade I discussed a little bit earlier. Mechie's like a slot guy. He's kind of a crafty route runner. He's a guy who might be useful as like a number 4 option on like those third and intermediate plays, but he's not an explosive athlete. The Jets need to get Isaiah Williams the ball more. Isaiah Williams has been a fantastic punt returner. He has 2 punt returns for a touchdown. He actually had a third last week that got called back on a penalty that really didn't have anything to do with the play. It's just like little things like that up and down the roster where they're not utilizing their players. They're not maximizing players' skill sets. They're using guys in the wrong roles. They talked about Breece Hall, not being used in the receiving game. Jets need to just figure out how to use the talents of the players they have better. So I think this is all kind of connected, though. I think they all fall under the umbrella of the Jets just getting out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Saints kind of have a similar situation, maybe not as sort of, I don't want to use the word dramatic, but maybe not as pronounced as some of the things that you mentioned. But look, a lot of the reasons why New Orleans lost its games early and games that they were otherwise competitive in were because they were playing against their opponent and themselves. Oftentimes it was, the ill-timed turnover. It was the penalty on 3rd and short that makes it 3rd and long. It was the defensive penalty on 3rd down that where they otherwise got to stop and forced a punt or even created a turnover. And then that play came back. I think that I just want to say this before I forget it. I think that the punt return part of the game that you just mentioned for New York is massive going into this matchup as well, because the Saints punt return coverage unit has gotten better throughout the season, but it has not been the typical special teams performance that we're used to seeing here in New Orleans. That too has been a big part of the rebuild. So I think that'll be a very important element to watch. But I think the Saints win this game if they don't create an opponent that doesn't need to be there, i.e. themselves. 2 games ago, they topped more than 10 penalties for the first time since, I think, the 3rd game of the season. And then last week, they had 9 penalties in this game. So they were teetering on it just then as well. So they would need to get rid of that. You need to get those numbers back down. And then I think the other piece is a fast start. Like, forgive me for saying, but I think some of the stuff that I've watched from the Jets, they feel a little unprepared, or at least underprepared to start games defensively. And I think that's something that New Orleans has shown offensively quite a bit this year. And so a fast start, I think, would go a long way for this team to be able to try to pull off a win as well.
I think that's a great point. And I think the other aspect of this is not a Jets offense that's built to come from behind. That wasn't
a great point. Yeah.
It wasn't the case when Justin Fields was in there because they did not have a dynamic passing attack. I mean, whether it's Tyrod Taylor, whether it's Brady Cook, I don't think they'd go back to Fields even if he's healthy. But if they went back to Fields, I mean, this is not going to be an offense that's got the ability to produce a lot of big plays. And it's not an offense that really has much to offer in terms of a passing attack. So this is a Jets team that can't play from behind.
Honestly, if there was any of those quarterbacks that I would be like, oh man, I'm worried about the Saints facing that quarterback, it's probably Tyrod Taylor. Like, I'd probably be more concerned about the Saints facing him than either of the other 2 options.
Yeah, I think that Taylor brings you a higher floor. You know, he's
Mhm.
a guy who's been in the NFL since 2011. So,
Yeah, seen a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could go down like all the studio show cliches. You know, he's been through the battles. He's
Been through the battles, seen not a coverage he hasn't seen.
But he's a guy who also avoids mistakes. And the other aspect with Taylor is that, look, he's not a great deep ball thrower. He's not a consistent deep ball thrower, but he likes to throw deep. And sometimes you just get hot in a game, and that might be that's like the one avenue the Jets do have to produce big plays. And I wouldn't expect it because he's not that consistent with it, but sometimes all it takes is one or two, and that can change a game.
Yeah, and having so that makes me think too. Just another injury thing for the Saints to watch would be safety Justin Reed, who they brought in, signed from the Kansas City Chiefs, or signed from free agency, left the Kansas City Chiefs last year, and has been a really solid safety for them, particularly down the stretch. He's played well throughout most of the season, but like particularly well up until that he left the Dolphins game a few weeks ago with a knee injury, returned to practice late last week. We'll see what happens when it comes to his game status this week, but he wasn't able to get back out on the field up against the Panthers just yet. But this feels like the week where he could potentially be back. Obviously, he would be a big part of eliminating some of those big plays and trying to keep the Jets from getting hot over on the offensive side. So, all right, let's take a look at predictions here as we wrap this one up. John, again, 4.5-point underdogs. The Jets are coming here to New Orleans with our friends over at FanDuel, where you can bet on this game today. What do you think? What's your prediction for this matchup?
I think it's really tough to pick the Jets after what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Now, it's possible that the defensive coordinator change got people's attention on the defensive side of the ball. It's possible that just, replacing the defensive coordinator might help the Jets implement better schemes this week. But I think this is a tough matchup. As we've been talking about, the Saints are playing pretty good football right now. Mm-hmm. I also just think the Superdome is one of the toughest road venues in the league. I don't care how bad the Saints are. I don't care how rough of a season the Saints are having. I mean, there's certain places like I hate going. Kansas City's one, Denver's one, Seattle's one. Those are the stadiums that are just really loud and really tough venues. So, I mean, I think the Saints win this game. I think it's going to be something like a 20-10 final score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, the Superdome showed up big time last week up against Carolina, especially in that kind of late surge, down 10-17, and then to come back over the last 2 drives and score 10 points to get a win in that matchup. Like, that was a big part of that was that home environment. And this is the last home game of the season, so there will be a lot of folks that are ready to go out there and make some noise, potentially play a role. I actually had the exact same score prediction. I was thinking 20-10. The Saints could potentially have a big scoring output in this game, depending on there's a lack of pressure that comes from New York's defense. They're 30th in the NFL right now in pressure rate, according to our friends over at True Media. And then we've talked a little bit about the coverage side of it all, but I don't see the Saints coming out there and having this big kind of blowout victory or anything like that. I think if they win this, it's maybe a comfortable win that's maybe made more comfortable later on in the game. But I don't think that this is some kind of a runaway. Oh, look how, I'm glad I remember to say this because it's one of my favorite phrases in the world. I don't think that the Saints should get too big for their britches here. I don't think that there's a situation to where you look at yourself getting your first 3-game win streak in a single season since 2022, and then feel like you're going to come out here and have this big blowout victory. This is still an NFL team that you're lining up across from, and it's still a talented team, and it's still a good coach over on the other side, no matter what the record looks like. And so I think that these two teams are probably competitive for most of the game. And then maybe it's New Orleans that pulls away a little bit late, or maybe just extends a slight lead a little bit late. But I'm taking the Saints 20-10 with this one as well. And I think New Orleans just continues to surge here as the season wraps up.
Yeah, and I think that this is, if the Jets are going to win one game left on their schedule, this would be the one where they have the best chance, because the next 2 games are Buffalo and New England. But there's some Jets fans who don't want to win this game. There's some Jets fans who really look at the draft positioning, which is always a debate this time of year. But after this one, I don't think Jets fans really have to worry about it either way, because I think those are going to be 2 really tough games left on the schedule.
John is over at Locked On Jets. Ross is over at Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slated games. We have a lot of exciting 4 p.m. games on the docket, so stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. We're all making choices every day one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats: fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher still rocking out with you here. It's Week 16. We're breaking down all of the action with just 3 weeks to go till the end of the regular season, which is unbelievable. Time has flown by here, but let's look at these 4 o'clock window games, starting off with a battle between two AFC contenders in the Jacksonville Jaguars and Denver Broncos. Both teams look like powerhouses. So Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars and Sarah Bettinger of Locked On Broncos take you through keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
Both these quarterbacks in Week 16 absolutely have to put on the Superman cape, Broncos country and Jaguars fans, but which one is it going to be? I mean, these two guys, it's going to take a huge effort, I think, from both of these defenses to stop these quarterbacks, to figure out a way to cover these receivers. The chess match within the chess match is real. We're going to break down keys to victory on today's Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Jaguars. Once again, thank you to all of you everydayers out there that make us part of your day, your first listen of the day, every single day. Tony, let's have it, man. Let's have the keys to victory, obviously, this week. And for the Jaguars to come away from the Mile High City, where nobody that's come in over the last 12 games dating back to last season has been able to win. What do the Jaguars have to do to be the first in quite some time?
I've adopted this mantra since they blew a 19-point lead to the Houston Texans in the fourth quarter, and that was their last loss. I've been saying me versus me. As long as the Jaguars look in the mirror and they put the best version of themselves on that field, I think they'll be fine. In fact, I actually think they're going to win the game, and that's just me knowing where they are as an organization and understanding that they didn't necessarily break Trevor Lawrence down. They actually put more on him. But it came down to pre-snap stuff, and then it came down to just trusting your eyes and then trusting your ability. Liam Cohen was a quarterback at a small school, man, and I'm sure he got this job saying, ooh, if I had that arm, if I had that size. And he just told Trevor 3 words: let it rip. Just let it rip, dude. Trust yourself. And now Trevor is starting to trust his eyes, and he's trusting what he's seeing. 3rd and 6, they get 7. 3rd and 8, they get 9. 3rd and 2, they might get 30. You absolutely watch them, and you think they're going to convert. It took a lot of converting fans and conversion of me to get to the point where I didn't get to 3rd down hoping and wishing they'd make it. I'm surprised when they don't now. So the difference between these two quarterbacks is I think most people want Bo Nix to play within himself. And it's okay to be Clark Kent. And I've been saying Trevor should be Clark Kent and just be Superman every now and then. Don't try to be Superman the entire game. You don't have to live up to the ghost of Patrick Mahomes and Cam Newton and all of these people. Tom Brady, before he threw for all of those yards with Randy Moss, they never won a Super Bowl doing that. Every time they won those first 3 Super Bowls, they were a running team. He was a game manager. So he's a 6'6" version of Brock Purdy. That's what he was. And then he kept doing it, and then he became the GOAT. So just play within yourself. But the difference with Trevor and Bo Nix is you're going to lean with Bo. I think you lean towards his moxie and the fact that he's a gamer. Like, he might be the first player you pick if y'all played kickball or hopscotch. He's just that type of guy, right? With Trevor, it's like, oh no, he got that big arm. God blessed you with that big arm and that 6'6" frame for a reason. You let that thing go. You don't fall back on being no gamer. You fall back on, I got something you ain't got, and it's right here. So he's gonna try. He's gonna try Surtain. He tried Stingley. got caught now. Got caught on a little Crossowitz thing. But Trevor, unlike other quarterbacks, he is going to try no matter who is out there. He's going to his number one receiver. And it's up to you to make a play on the ball, and I love that.
I do too. I think that's been fun to watch in his evolution as a player. You know, tons of pressure on the guy back when he was still in high school, right? I still remember that. People talking about him as a future number one pick before he even got to Clemson. So the fact that he's been able to get to the point that he's at today is rather impressive. I think from the Broncos side of things, the key to victory in this game is going to be your defense playing exactly like it did in the second half against the Packers. Figure out a way to do that from the jump. Get inside the head of that quarterback who just accounted for 6 touchdowns this past week or whatever it was. I mean, just throwing it all over the yard to all different guys and making plays however he needed to do so, leading the team in rushing. Go out there as a defense and make a statement early in this game. Get the crowd into this game early on. And that's why I say I think Bo Nix needs to put on that cape, is because I feel like from the jump of this game, he has to get his team out to a lead to allow the defense to play to its strengths, getting after the quarterback, being aggressive with the blitz package, allow those corners to play press man coverage, be aggressive on the football when it's in the air. That's up to Bo Nix to allow them to do that, right? Because if you get down, man, we saw it. Josh Jacobs, 40-yard touchdown run. And I know the Broncos came back to win the game, but you do have to make those major adjustments when you get down by 7 points, 9 points, 13 points, whatever it is. So you want to allow that defense to play its game early on. Keep that cape on if you're Bo Nix and make sure that you're making all the plays that need to be made. Get out of the pressure on third down. Extend those drives. Do what needs to be done to make the plays and allow your defense to pin its ears back right from the jump.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You know, me versus me, just like you just basically described what I said. Just be the best version of yourself. I think we're gonna get a barn burner of a game. I think the first team 27 wins. That's just the way I'm going. Even though with both defenses, I'll challenge you with this though. I want you to watch something. People look at the Jaguars and they're not on national TV a lot. I think you'll be astounded how good Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, Foye Oluokun, Jordan Lewis. I just think you're going to see him. And Devin Lloyd, he was the player of the month, defensive player of the month for the whole league. I'm telling you, you're going to be blown away defensively how good this team is. And I think it's going to send a statement to the rest of the league that both of these teams are going to be formidable. And we got new sheriffs in town, baby. Drake May and Bo Nix and Trevor Lawrence and not the old usual names. And how y'all feel knowing that, not that Mahomes is hurt, but how y'all feel knowing that Kansas City, they brought the head in a bag. You wanted proof of death? Here it is right here. They're done.
That's it. We celebrated it to a significant extent when the Houston Texans, I think it was, they beat them, and it officially mathematically eliminated them from playoff from the AFC West title. So we knew that it was going to be somebody other than the Chiefs, and that was what we're reveling in this back in 2023. Everybody's like, why did Sean Payton take this job in the same division as Mahomes and same division as Herbert, right? Why would he take this job? Why would he come back to go coach in the AFC West? Russell Wilson, he's past his prime. He's got a 90 million dead cap hit. All those sorts of things, those are all there. They're all embedded in our brains, in the back of our minds, in the file cabinet of what people said to doubt this team. And the Broncos, it starts from the ownership on down. The ownership getting aggressive and going after Sean Payton and bringing in somebody who believed that he could turn the ship around. It's exactly what I think both of these franchises needed, is, like I said, that right person to be the straw to stir the drink. And for the Broncos, that is Sean Payton. He's the culture creator of this organization right now, other than the ownership group, obviously, but he's been exactly as you would have hoped for a coach that you traded a first and second round pick for.
Yeah, man. I don't think people realize, I know you've probably been around Sean. I've interviewed him here in Jacksonville before. Look, man, I heard people say, well, why would any coach go to the SEC knowing they got to play Nick Saban? Those dudes ain't yoked like that, man. They don't care nothing about these guys. Nope. I'm telling you, to get to that level, you actually think you are the man.
Yep.
So you know why Sean Payton took the job? Because of what he's doing right now. That's why he took it. So we need to just start saying people are just a little bit more confident and don't think through the same prism that we do. We got the right coach, and I'm glad that we didn't end up with anybody. Look, the Jaguars are going to take him or Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson went somewhere else, and they're both in the running for Coach of the Year with Mike Vrabel. So, look, we got it right, and we are very, very happy to have Liam Cohen. And I think after this Sunday, y'all will see exactly why, whether the Jaguars win or lose. By the way, I'm picking the Jaguars to win 27-24.
I love it. I love it. I always pick the Broncos to win. I'm 12-2 so far this season in my picks, so I'll take that absolutely. And I think it's going to be a great matchup. You know what? It's two teams that they're going to be juiced up for this game. The intensity, it's going to be high, and I think both of these teams know they're going to be playing bigger games here in the future. And we're once again getting a little 90s throwback, everybody. Last week it was Broncos Packers. This week it's Broncos Jaguars with high stakes.
Sarah's over at Locked On Broncos. Tony's over at Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Lions and Steelers, two teams that are at 8-6 and two teams that are fighting for their playoff lives in different ways. Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Talk about what these two teams need to do to pick up a win.
8-6 Lions, 8-6 Steelers, Ford Field on Sunday. Pittsburgh, of course, trying to win the AFC North and hold off the Baltimore Ravens. Lions looking to win 3 straight games, hopefully get the Bears in Week 18 for a shot at the playoffs right now as they look up in the standings at both Green Bay and Chicago in the NFC North. All right, Chris, how do the Steelers win this game? What do they have to do to get it done on Sunday?
What don't they have to do? They need to come out and they need to live up to their philosophy, and the philosophy that's been with Mike Tomlin and Bill Cowher. It's the bedrock of the Steelers. Stop the run. You got to take away the run, force them to 3rd and longs, force that quarterback to have to hold on to the football and wait for routes to develop. Let that pass rush get active, and then also let your secondary kind of play into what they're seeing happening there and try to take advantage of some mistakes. That's a big key as far as what needs to happen if the Steelers hope to make it work in this game. But they have to stop the run. If Jahmyr Gibbs gets going, it's over for this team because they're going to be put behind the sticks. Then the Steelers can't operate. The Steelers offense is most dangerous when it can be balanced. So that's another thing I would say here. They need that balanced offensive attack because they've had games where the passing games carried them like they did against the Ravens. But you saw what they did to the Dolphins, 4 straight touchdown drives from the second quarter to the third quarter. I think maybe even a little bit in the fourth. But 4 straight touchdown drives, and it was because the Dolphins, they were like, wait a minute, they're running, wait, they're passing, wait, they're doing an RPO. I asked Aaron Rodgers, how do you run an RPO when you're like 42? You're not fast. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I know that people, you think of RG3 when they think of RPOs, but he was fast, but I have a fast release. And so that's a big part of what the Steelers do now is they try to balance things. And so you stop the run and then you keep it so that this game doesn't get out of hand. And then you run up that balanced offense and then try to put the Lions defense in some tough spots where if they're not stopping the run well, maybe they overcommit some run help there. And then you get more one-on-ones for DK Metcalf. The new additions of Thielen and MVS, you probably don't look at the stat sheet and say, oh, well, they probably look at the stat sheet and say like, oh, well, they're not really doing much. But since they've arrived, they've opened up things for DK Metcalf because they're able to run their rights at the right timing, and that's made everything different for Aaron Rodgers in a good way. So if I'm the Lions, cannot let this offense come out and have this balanced attack because then that's when they eat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's interesting. Aaron Rodgers coming back to Ford Field. The last time I believe he was there with the Packers, Lions had some pretty good success against Rodgers. Aiden Hutchinson had a tipped interception for a touchdown. Jim Nantz and Aaron Rodgers will be in the building together. And the last time that happened, you recall the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary to Richard Rodgers years ago, which was an absolute stunner for all of us that were at Ford Field that Thursday night. But regardless, harassing him, getting him down, getting after the quarterback. They did not have good success against Matthew Stafford this past Sunday, and he torched him for over 40 points. So I think some pressure on Rodgers is going to be key. Plus, crowd would love that. That would get the crowd really into the game if you see Rodgers go down early in the game with a sack or at least some quarterback hits. And you mentioned it before about stopping the run. I think the Lions have to run the football. I think it's time to unlock Jahmyr Gibbs here a little bit. Yes, in the passing game, he's been great. Yes, he's broken off some huge plays, including in that Giants win a few weeks ago. But some consistency with Gibbs and Montgomery where they're averaging 4, 5, 6 a pop.
you're getting into 2nd and 4s, you're getting into 3rd and 2s, and it's not, like you said, 3rd and long situations where for the first time this year without Ben Johnson, the Lions have had a lot of 3rd and longs that just have not worked. And I said this last week, and I'll say it again, I see something in the bag of tricks for Dan Campbell this week in terms of some sort of trick play or something that I think can just get the crowd into it, turn a game a little bit. But the offense is still number 1 in scoring. They still put up over 30 this past week against a damn good Rams team and a pretty damn good defense. But I think all those things come into play this week. And I would think that the Lions, being at home, desperate game, facing a Steelers team that is hotter than I think people expected them to be coming into this, I think the Lions are going to win this football game. But it's not going to be easy. Nothing's been easy this year for Detroit. Remember their last home win was against Dallas, was tight. And then they escaped against the Giants just 2 weeks earlier than that and needed overtime to beat a 2-3 win Giant team at that point.
Yeah, no, I'm right with you. I think that the Lions, they have the edge in this. I think they're a much more balanced team. I think they have the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL right now, I believe.
Yep.
So, and they've earned that. Listen, this is going to be a tough challenge for the Steelers. And I say this, I know some Steelers fans like, what are you saying, Chris? I'm saying this is a pretty good Lions team they're going up against. And not that they haven't faced other good teams. They've beaten the Patriots. They've beaten the Colts, though. I think the Colts now have kind of fallen off. But I look at this Lions team, and they were one of my favorites to be in Super Bowl contention. I think I ended up picking the Packers to go all the way in the NFC in my Post-Gazette, my Pittsburgh Post-Gazette preseason poll. But I had the Lions right up there with them because I know how talented they are and how dangerous they are. So the Steelers are going to have their hands full, and I think that they know that. They know this is a big matchup, but I also think they've been really interesting in how confident that they've been of late, and not in a cocky kind of way, just in a kind of like we're gonna get it done because it's our job to get it done. And that's not something I think we saw. There was a lot of times earlier in the year where you saw guys abandoning their assignments to go help other people's assignments, and in doing so, opening up more problems in the defense. A guy would leave a zone wide open or not cover his man or leave a gap open in the run game because they're trying to help someone else. They weren't trusting each other. They weren't having confidence that they could each do their jobs and play to the scheme the way they're supposed to play it. And I'd say in the past couple of weeks, they've started to play a lot more confident in doing that. And I think that's going to be something they need to be on 10 about in this Lions matchup.
Watch the Lions secondary as well. Very banged up. Both safeties out. Top number 2 corner, Terry Arnold obviously out, and DJ Reed has struggled. So keep an eye on that.
Chris is over at Locked On Steelers. Matt's over at Locked On Lions, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Raiders and Texans. Texans, their defense. Whew, that Texans team is playing lights out football right now. Meanwhile, the Raiders, I don't think I'd go that far in saying they're playing lights out football. It's been a rough year for Vegas. So John Hickman of Locked On Texans and your boy Q of Locked On Raiders talk about if the Raiders can pull the upset or if the Texans are going to be in the driver's seat the whole way on this one.
Texan fans, Raider fans, thank you for sticking around to this point of the show. We really appreciate it. Make sure you do your Spotify wrap-ups. And shout out to our everydayers from the Raiders or the Texans Himalayas. Thank you for making Locked On Texans, Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day. Thank you for making the Locked On Network your number 1 sports podcast network. You're already living your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Texans or Locked On Raiders at lockedontexans.supercast.com or lockedonraiders.supercast.com. For $5 or $5 a month or $50 a year. Again, visit lockedontexanssupercast.com or lockedonraiders.supercast.com. Our game predictions. Q, what you got?
I mean, I just think that the Raiders are going to take this L. I think Houston will win this game. I mean, look, they need this game. They want this game. They need to, keep on winning. They've got playoff aspirations. The Raiders, they're looking to the offseason. I'll tell you what, Raider Nation doesn't want the Raiders to win any more games. I can promise you that. I mean, I've had those conversations already. Raider Nation wants to see the Raiders lose out the rest of the season and end up with that number 1 pick so they can go and have the chance to do what the Texans did a couple seasons ago where they went and got their quarterback to be their franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. The Raiders want to have that opportunity. At least Raider Nation wants them to have that opportunity. That doesn't mean the players in the locker room don't want to win. I know they do. I don't know what the GM, what their, the front office is feeling and how they'd like the season to end, but I'm sure ending up with the number 1 overall pick, John Spytek wouldn't be too upset about that either. So, I mean, look, I just think Houston's a better team. their defense is great. It's a championship defense, and their offense is coming along, right? I mean, there's one point where their offense stunk, and now their offense is playing really well. Like you said, the 40 points that they put up against the Cardinals, they seem like they're getting it together. C.J. Stroud's playing a lot better. I just think this is a terrible matchup for the Raiders, and that's why they'll get the win. But I mean, again, the Texans will get the win, but it's just, I mean, again, they go out there and they play, and we've seen some crazy things happen, especially this year in the NFL.
Is there a player y'all want with y'all first pick? Y'all looking at Mendoza, or do you want to trade out of it?
I think most people are looking at Mendoza. I'm not 100% sold that that's what the team is doing. I like Mendoza. I like what he's been able to do in the clutch, coming back against Penn State and getting the dub, seeing what he did against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, even beating Iowa. Oregon, that was a big win. I thought there's moments where he's been really good looking as far as the quarterback prospect, but it's nothing that's been like overwhelming, like when there was Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May and all those quarterbacks. I don't think this draft is really, to kind of shaping up to look like that right now. But I mean, if you get a chance to go get your quarterback and the team believes that that's the quarterback that they could build around, by all means, go get him. Just like I said, like the Texans did when they picked C.J. Stroud number 2 overall.
It does feel like an underwhelming draft altogether, so I'm interested to see how you guys rebuild that team. But my game prediction, you're right. I think this is a game that could possibly get out of hand and be done really by the start of the third quarter, midway through that quarter. Houston's defense is taking it personal again after last week. They didn't feel like they played to their standard. D'Amico Ryan said that exactly. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I like this matchup for Houston because it could be another game where they can stack a great performance. They hadn't had a lot of that this year, at least not for a full game. They got it going against Tennessee in their first win of the year in the fourth quarter. They followed up a full game against Baltimore, but it was a quarter and then a game. I want to see them do it for back-to-back 4 quarters. And so when I look at what the Las Vegas Raiders presents as issues, I don't think that those problems would be, big enough to stop Houston's offense. I think whenever Houston run the ball well, they score 32 points per game when they rush for over 100. And so that is a formula for Houston to get things going. The play action, the boot, they feed off of that. And then also, there's not a player over there that I think can hold or stop Nico Collins. If anybody stops Nico Collins, it'll be Houston not getting him the ball. And we know that they can't afford to do that. So I look at this game as a groove game where Houston can continue to feel themselves, get that groove going into the playoffs, more so going into the game against the Chargers that following Saturday, because that's another playoff push team right now. They're currently in the wild card spot. If Houston beats them, that really plays into their favor, because if they don't catch the AFC South champs right now, currently the Jags, they'll still secure their playoff seeding. And so Houston's offense needs to come alive, and I think the defense will give them turnovers and great field position in order to do that. If they are a little bit better in the red zone, they feel like they left plays and points out there on the board, then this game could be over by halftime.
Well, don't let them get caught looking ahead. Don't let them look ahead. They better be laser focused on one game at a time, brother. Don't let them get looking to the Chargers next Saturday, because if they do, you never know how things happen. Look, I'll tell you, and I'm not thinking that D'Amico Ryan's team will do this, but, man, there was a time last year when the Raiders went into Baltimore, beat the Ravens. It was a great win. They came back home. Carolina Panthers didn't have no wins. They were terrible, just benched their quarterback, and they got mollywopped by the Panthers. And so you can't look ahead and get too excited about what they're doing one game at a time, which, like I said, I think D'Amico Ryans will have them laser focused. But, yeah, man, they better be one game at a time and get ready to roll, because they got something special going, especially with that defense.
They do, and I'm going to say this. I think, to your point, D'Amico Ryans ain't letting no side of the ball look ahead. You know one thing he said? In the post-game press conference Sunday, he was asked about the 6-game win streak. He said, I didn't even know we won 6 games in a row. Now, obviously, he's just playing, but that's just how focused this unit has been. This team has been all together. And D'Amico Ryans don't play about that. 1 week at a time.
It's good.
Every opponent is that opponent that need to focus on for that week. So you're absolutely right.
John's over at Locked On Texans. Q is over at Locked On Raiders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Falcons and Cardinals. That is the last 4 p.m. matchup of Week 16. Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons and Alice Clancy of Locked On Cardinals talk about 2 very interesting NFC teams.
Aaron Freeman, Locked on Falcons. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Week 16 crossover Thursday. Thank you for making crossover Thursday your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked on the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to level up. Go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Falcons with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. The link are in our respective descriptions. Check it out, man. We're leveling up. #1, baby. It's a wild thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we saw it coming, but it's a wild thing that we're here after all the years that we've been doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of those first checks that we were getting that were, they were paying us pennies when you calculated it based off of the hourly rate. It was pennies on the hour that we were making, but we've come a long way as a network.
My first check in 2017, first month of work, 39 cents.
I think my first one was like $11, but that was because
I wish I would have saved it. That's the only thing I regret in my radio and media career is not saving that first check. Because so many people have busted their ass. I mean, we're so lucky here. We're so lucky. Keys to victory. Turnover battle. The only problem with this, Aaron Freeman of Locked on Falcons, is the Cardinals took the ball away from Trevor Lawrence 4 times and still lost weeks ago. So it's not an exact science anymore. The Cardinals have found ways to lose in ways that we didn't think were possible on this planet or probably other planets. But that's why the Cardinals cannot afford to turn the ball over. They need to take the ball away. They cannot give the ball up if they want to have a chance to win on Sunday.
Yeah, it's been like 4 games since the Cardinals have gotten a takeaway in a game at this point in time.
I think with Jacksonville. So 3. Yeah, 4.
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins, he'll give you the ball at times. He's a very chaotic quarterback. So you don't quite know which version of Kirk Cousins you're gonna. Are you gonna get the consummate game manager, or are you gonna get the guy that's gonna try to push the ball in tight windows? Kirk has been better this year, certainly as of late. I think throwing 9 interceptions in 4 games last year that cost him his starting job has led him. I'm gonna just check the ball down to Kyle Pitts, and we'll live to play another down. You've seen a lot of that over the weeks, and then in the fourth quarter when they can go down the field and when he needs to make the throws, he was able to do that last week. So turnovers have been a big part of the Falcons. I know Locked on Falcons have heard me cite various stats about basically the Falcons, win like 90% of their games when they win the turnover margin, and then lose 90% of their games when they lose the turnover margin all season long. So I won't necessarily bore them with the same stats over, but yes, turnovers I think will be a huge part of this game.
What else on from your end?
Special teams. Both of these teams' special teams aren't very good.
Not great.
And the Falcons typically lose games because of their special teams, and because Arizona's special teams isn't very good. This is maybe one of the rare instances where their special teams may give them that slight advantage in this game, and in a close game, as we talk about turnovers. One big kick return, one messed coverage, one muffed kick and whatnot. That could really turn this game in a major way.
It's crazy that when you get to this point of the season and everybody's injured and you've got guys at, secondary, tertiary levels of talent, and then you've got practice squad guys coming up late. And I don't think there's a wider margin of this is a Pro Bowl special teamer and this is a practice squad special teamer. Like, it is so glaringly obvious when the Cardinals were not at full strength. They had a practice squad guy fumbled a kickoff last week after a Rams touchdown, or after a Texans touchdown that resulted in points. It's been a problem. Blake Gillikin, their starting kicker, has been on IR for the large portion of the season. Chad Ryland is slowly starting to turn orange into that pumpkin, slowly but surely. It's not apparent at first, but it's coming. Yeah, I mean that's a big one for the Cardinals. They've given up big kickoff returns, big punt returns, and it's already easy to return the ball to the 35 now. Those extra 15 yards can be backbreaking. And I think really what it's going to come down to is Trey McBride versus Kyle Pitts. Like, if Kyle Pitts outperforms Trey McBride, the Cardinals aren't going to win. Like, you need 11, 12 receptions, 120 yards, and a touchdown or two for the Cardinals to win, because now Bam Knight is on IR. So they've got me starting at running back, wearing number 44 like I did in high school, and that's going to be it. They're going to have to throw the ball so much. That's going to be it. It's Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. The Cardinals they don't got a chance.
Yeah, I think the Falcons make somebody else beat you other than Trey McBride, right? You're not going to stop him, but if you can contain him, particularly on third downs in the red zone, that's really going to be your key. with slowing down Trey McBride and yeah, force Michael Wilson to make me look good, at least based off of that mock draft, and catch 10, 12 passes, 150 yards. He's done that so far this season. But like, if that's what the Cardinals need to do to beat you, then so be it. And if Michael Wilson winds up beating you, then so be it. But you go into this game making somebody else other than Trey McBride beat you.
I think it's glaringly obvious that both of these teams are way too talented to have the records that they do. It's tough to watch because both of these teams, when healthy, are fun watch. They're popcorn watch. Aaron, if you could, and I haven't asked you this, if you could come up with one word that would summarize the first 15 weeks of the season for the Falcons, what would it be?
The one that immediately popped in my head was disappointing.
Yeah, and that's fair. Mine was duped. Before the season started, I said, if this is where we are watching this team midway through the season, late in the season, I will 100% feel duped. And here we are, me and my big dumb face.
Aaron's over at Locked On Falcons. Alex is over at Locked On Cardinals, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 4 p.m. slate of games. We have 2 great primetime matchups for Week 16 that we're going to talk about here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. It's Kevin Ostreicher. We're still here. We're still talking Week 16 action. We talked about 1 p.m. games. We talked about 4 p.m. games. Let's talk about those prime time games. Starting off, Patriots and Ravens. 2 teams fighting for different things. The Ravens are trying to find a way to get into the postseason. The Patriots, after that loss to the Bills, they're trying to find a way to get the 1 seed and hold on to that AFC East lead. So Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots and myself, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, take it through what each team needs to do to pull out the big win. Continuing on Crossover Thursday, Locked On Ravens and Locked On Patriots. Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots. Wrapping up our show, but we still have some keys to victory to talk about for both of these teams. So, Nick, I'll start with you. What are 3 keys or keys you have to victory for New England and how they can get a win in Baltimore?
This is probably low-hanging fruit, but it is what it is. Keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket. And I know Lamar Jackson has not necessarily been the same guy. All the physical issues, I've watched him play a number of times because Baltimore's on TV an awful lot in prime time, as you mentioned earlier. He's got like 75 ailments he's dealing with. And I don't think anybody watching Lamar Jackson feels like he's Lamar Jackson right now, as far as, his ceiling of play, his level of play. I thought he moved around pretty well last week against Cincinnati for what that's worth, but you've got to be able to keep him in the pocket. And, the Patriots did a very good job, Kevin, last weekend in the first half of maintaining, discipline and keeping Josh Allen in the pocket, not allowing him to extend plays, not allowing him to roll to his right, not allowing him to hurt them with his legs, with some designed runs. Second half, it was completely different. Buffalo threw some designed runs at the Patriots. They struggled. They struggled with some of the read option stuff. You look at 1 touchdown in particular, which was, again, I remind you how bad the red zone defense is. 3rd and goal from the 14-yard line, and Buffalo scored. No big deal. Josh Allen just rolls out, extends, and Jack Gibbons, who I mentioned earlier, just loses coverage against a tight end, touchdown. Easy, right? So they've got to limit Lamar Jackson's movement. They got to keep him in the pocket, which is obviously easier said than done. Secondly, I would also say offensively for the Patriots, they've got to find a way to get Stephon Diggs going against, I think, a pretty tough matchup with these Baltimore cornerbacks. The last 3 games, Stephon Diggs has had a total of 8 catches and 72 yards, and that's just not going to do it. I mean, he has been crucial to the operation for most of this season. 3rd down, 4th down, some huge conversions. Drake May trusts Stephon Diggs in big spots, and Stephon Diggs just has not been the same guy. And if you look historically, his worst month of the season through his career is December. So are we starting to see that decline? He's also playing less snaps. I wonder if the Patriots will play him more on Sunday night to try to get him going. And finally, what I would say to you, my 3rd key is 3rd down. I said this going into the Buffalo game, but especially with this matchup after what happened against Buffalo, the Patriots' 3rd down defense needs to hold up after last week. Buffalo was 8 for 14 on 3rd down. The Patriots have hung their hat all year long on being a good 3rd down defense. It's part of the reason why they've kept pretty much every team until last weekend to 20 points or less It's because of that third down defense. They get off the field. In Baltimore, 24th on third down in offense. So can the Patriots get off the field? Can they limit Baltimore's explosivity on third down and put them in third and long situations and just get off the field and give Drake May some time to operate? So those would be three of my keys. I got more, but those are three of my keys, and I've talked long enough.
No, well, I'm glad. I think we're both in agreement on the red zone. That's going to be my first key here for Baltimore's offense is you need to be able to score points. We talked about it throughout the entire show, and mentioning New England 75% conversion rate against their defense. That was where Baltimore was last season on offense. They were the best red zone offense in the league last year, 74, right around their percentage conversion rate. They have dropped 30 percentage points this year to be the second worst. They're now 44% conversion rate in the red zone as an offensive unit. And, you mentioned that third and goal from the 14. I mean, the Ravens have had drives, Nick, where they'll be at the opposing 3-yard line, have 4 shots at it, and they don't get in the end zone. And sometimes it can be more difficult because the field shrinks in the red zone and you have less room to operate. But I mean, you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on your football team. You should be able to punch that ball in a little bit more than you have. So again, I don't think field goals are going to cut it for either of these teams. Secondly, for me, I think establishing your run game early because, mentioning how the Patriots have struggled recently against the run, I think that can open up a lot of your offense because if you are running it, 8 yards a clip with Derrick Henry, maybe 5 yards a clip with Keaton Mitchell, whatever those numbers are, and you're picking up chunk gains on first and second down, naturally the Patriots going to have to stack the box a little more, and that will open up the play action game because you see maybe an option play or a straight handoff, and those linebackers and safeties are going to take that step up because they're worried about the run game and, it's been beating us all day. And so Lamar will pull that ball back, and you can maybe have Mark Andrews or an Isaiah Likely, creep over the linebackers. Lamar can just throw that ball up over the heads of those guys and find those zones. So I think that the run game will open up a lot of what they do. And then finally, I think for the defense of Baltimore, it's forcing a turnover or two. And I know that for the Ravens, turnovers were really hard to come by over the first month or two of the season. Their defense was horrendous. They picked it up after the bye week, and while it's still inconsistent, I mean, the Ravens sack leader right now is Mike Green with 3.5 through 15 weeks, which is not wonderful. But having those splash plays on defense doesn't even have to be a turnover. It could just be a big sack on Drake May that, pushes the Patriots out of field goal range or something along those lines. Like I mentioned, the Ravens very momentum based. So I feel like with those turnovers, obviously that helps any team out, but it just feels like with Baltimore, I don't have the exact record of what they are when they force a turnover versus when they don't, but they might be undefeated when they force a turnover. They might have lost every single game when they don't. It feels that much of a swing when it happens. So Drake May is an incredible player, but he also is somebody who is young, and the Ravens generally have had success against rookie and second-year quarterbacks because of the complexity of that defensive system, whether it was Don Martindale or Mike McDonald or now with Zach Orr sending simulated blitzes or simulated pressures and disguise stuff. So, like we saw in that, if you saw the Kyle Van Noy play where he intercepted Joe Burrow and then handed off to Alohi Gilman, who runs up the sideline for the pick six, they were rushing DBs on that play and dropped back Travis Jones, their defensive lineman, and Van Noy into coverage. So they'll do a lot of crazy stuff like that with their guys to keep it unpredictable. So if you can get pressure on Drake May, force him to speed up that internal clock and maybe make a couple of tough decisions and say, I have this guy open, but all of a sudden, hey, here comes Kyle Hamilton to make a play or something like that. I think a splash play or two on defense is going to go a long way for this Ravens team. But should be a good one on Sunday night. Don't turn your TV on looking for the game at 1. It was moved to Sunday night. It's not going to be there if you turn on your TV at 1. So primetime football. You can find me over at Locked On Ravens. You can find Nick over at Locked On Patriots, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Monday Night Football time, 49ers and Colts, two teams that are looking to get into the postseason. The 49ers have had a good year, but they've been overshadowed by the Rams and the Seahawks in that NFC West. Meanwhile, the Colts, after losing Daniel Jones, Phillip Rivers at the helm for that Colts team at quarterback. So Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers and Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts talk about which of these two teams will come out with a big win.
All right, guys, we are back for our final time here on this show, diving into the keys to victory for both the San Francisco 49ers and the Indianapolis Colts. Croc, I'll throw it to you again here. What is the key to victory for the 49ers this week to beat the Colts while on the road on Monday Night Football too. Very fun time.
I've alluded to it with the biggest matchup, and I'm going to go back to that. The 49ers on the season, dead last in sacks, and it's not even close. Like between them and the 31st team, 49ers have like 16 sacks. 31st team has like 22, 23.
You guys are behind Myles Garrett. I saw that graphic today. Myles Garrett's ahead of your whole team this year.
Myles Garrett has several more sacks than the 49ers entire team. So I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse a little bit, but that has to be the key for the 49ers. You have to sack Phillip Rivers, and you have to sack him more than once, and that has been a big challenge for the 49ers, but I would say that is legitimately a big key to this game for San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, no, it's a huge part of that. And actually, it's really funny because it kind of links in with the Colts, where the Colts with Phillip Rivers, their key to victory going forward is bring games down to its ugliest fashion. We're going old school football, not in the sense we're under center, like we're still in the gun all game because Phillip Rivers can't move. But the whole goal of the Colts to win games down the stretch is to play complete ball control on offense, no negative plays. We're going to beat you 3 yards in a cloud of dust at a time and maybe get some first downs that way. Pin you deep with special teams if we have to punt, and then win on defense. It's the only way they had a chance against Seattle last week, and they nearly pulled it off. And I think that's the way they're going to approach a lot of these games down the stretch. So for the Colts, it's kind of avoid those negative plays, avoid those turnovers, avoid those sacks, because if they can avoid those, they can keep on track. That's, again, against Seattle, only 1 sack, and it was on the play where Phillip Rivers slipped on the logo. That really funny viral moment where he just fell down and it took him 10 minutes to get back up. That was the only sack they allowed in that game. Only turnover was in the desperate moments at the very end. They kept it pretty clean on offense for the most part, and that's why the Seattle Seahawks were starting inside the 20, inside the 10 on most possessions, and why they were only able to get field goals. So I think that's the Colts' plan of attack down the stretch here with Phillip Rivers starting. So if you're the Colts, you got to avoid those sacks. You have to avoid those turnovers, because any one turnover or 1 sack can flip the game script against you. And can Phillip Rivers win with a negative game script? Probably not. He can probably only get the win for you if it's just that ball control, getting 3 to 4 yards, falling forward, and winning a field goal battle. If you throw a pick 6, that might be the end of the game for the Colts. So for the Colts, it's avoid those big negative plays.
I think another thing for the 49ers is something that they've actually done very well, and it's flown under the radar a little bit. It's one of those things when it's not an issue, you don't bring it up as much. When it's an issue, you talk about it a lot. But special teams, 49ers are top of the league right now in special teams, and that is an area where they struggled with for years. And they hired a new special teams coordinator. It seems like they're getting it right. And some of these games we're talking about, if you're going to win games with the amount of injuries the 49ers have, there has to be something else than you just playing well, offensively or defensively. And I think for the 49ers, it's been special teams. I don't even want to mention the kicker's stats right now because I don't want to jinx anything, but he's got a good thing going right now. Eddie Pinheiro kicking the ball. Special teams, they've been able to take the ball away several times. They've been able to capitalize off of getting either a big return by the 49ers returner Sky Moore, or pinning teams back on punt coverage. So 49ers continue to play really good special teams, a very underrated aspect of their game right now that's really attributing to some of these wins.
Yeah, no, when you're a team like the 49ers coming into this matchup, you're favored by 5.5 on the road against an 8-win team. So a team that has won this year, but you're favored heavily in that game, you have to win that third phase, because underdogs have a chance if they can win that third phase against you. So if you're the 49ers, don't turn it over on special teams. Make sure that your returns are crisp and clean. Don't get pinned deep. And I think for the Colts, again, the inverse is true, where it's like, you if you don't win special teams, you're not upsetting a team like the 49ers, so you have to have those margin for errors going your way, because the way that the Colts want to play, special teams and defense need to win the day for you. So the defense needs to perform like it did last week, physical, coming downhill, flying all over the place, and then special teams need to win that way. But that's my second key here, actually, is the defensive aspect of that, where the Colts run defense since their bye week has been the second best in football, only behind the Los Angeles Chargers. They've held teams to only 3.3 yards per carry. I think they're 6th in success rate against. They're getting a lot of negative plays. And if you're the Colts against a 49ers offense that has a quarterback that can create like Brock Purdy, you want to keep them behind the count as much as possible. You want to get them into 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12s, because if they can get into those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 situations, good luck covering, again, McCaffrey on an angle route or covering Kittle one-on-one with the injuries that the Colts have on defense. So keep flying downhill, stuff the run like they have been, and keep the 49ers to 3rd and 10, 3rd and 8 plus, and you might have a puncher's chance of doing what you did against Seattle here against the 49ers offense.
Well, one thing the 49ers aren't doing very well is running the ball. And you would think that wouldn't be the case when it's a team like Kyle Shanahan right here. When people call him a genius, it's not because he just has these elaborate passing concepts. It's because of the way he draws up the run game. And right now, it just has not hit. Christian McCaffrey currently right now has the 2nd most runs in the season, third most in his entire career. But he's just shy of 1,000 yards. He will hit that. Again, the volume so far has been crazy high for him. 3.6 yards per carry. That's the lowest yards per carry in his career. So he still may very well get 23, 24 carries in this game. It just might be a hard fight, 65 yards. And that's what the 49ers have seen a lot of. Now, if they can get something going on the ground, that would be awesome. But like you said, this is a Colts team who has done a really good job of defending the run. And I think that's something that they might be able to do again against the 49ers. So it'll probably be the other things, keeping Brock Purdy in the pocket, having to make throws. One thing I think Brock Purdy is really good at is when he has the run and pass as an option. And what I mean by that is 1st down, 2nd down, right? If you let them get 4 yards on the ground, 5 yards, it's like, oh, they can throw the ball right here, or they can run the ball. That's when I feel like he's probably his most efficient. When you get him in those kind of 3rd and long situations, he still can complete them. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's where he's been more prone to force something to a receiver and potentially turn the ball over. So I think against the Tennessee Titans, they did a pretty good job of staying out of those positions, and most of the 3rd downs were very manageable for the most part. And I thought he excelled and played at an extremely high level in that game. If you can get him to be a little uncomfortable with the down and distance, he may force something and give you something, and that could open up an opportunity for the Colts. Did it several times against the Carolina Panthers, threw 3-4 interceptions in that game. Didn't matter. 49ers still won. So even with him doing that, if the 49ers defense does their part on Phillip Rivers, they still can pull a win out, even if there are some of those turnovers.
Yeah, and I'll close it out with just one more that I think applies for every game, for every single team, but especially in this one with 2 banged up teams. Whoever wins the trenches will win the day. As always, that's how it works in the NFL. If you can win up front, you have a good chance at winning. So if the Colts, with their backup offensive tackles, but still their interior intact with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, they can run the ball effectively. It takes the pressure off Rivers and they can put points on the board. And on the other side, they can pressure Brock Purdy. It puts them in better position. But on the inverse side, if the 49ers can protect Purdy and let him do his thing in the backfield there, I don't think Jonathan Edwards and Mekhi Blackmon, Cameron Mitchell, I don't know how long those guys are going to be able to cover the Kittles of the world, the Jennings of the world. Like, those are good players out there, and the Colts just don't have the talent right now in the back end. And on the other side, if the Colts can't run the ball, Phillip Rivers isn't carrying you to victory. This is not, 2015 Phillip Rivers, 2014 Phillip Rivers. He's a grandpa now. He's not going to carry you to victory. So whoever wins the trenches will win the day in this one, especially, it's true in every game, but I think especially in this one with the known weaknesses these two teams have.
Man, you said 2015 and 2014. I think even by then he was still in the NFL for a long time.
Right.
Prior to that. So he's been around a long time, and we're going to see how he holds up in this big time matchup.
Yeah, definitely be a fun one here. Both teams still have playoff hopes. The Colts' hopes are probably more hopes right now than the 49ers, who are, doing their thing. But should be a fun one on Monday night between these two squads. Again, primetime football in Indy. We will see the interesting uniforms the Colts have in that game as well. So make sure you guys are tuning in.
Eric's over at Locked On 49ers. Zach is over at Locked On Colts. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Should be a great Week 16. Enjoy your football, enjoy your Sunday, and of course, enjoy your weekend. We'll be back here diving into Week 17's NFL action And I think there's going to be plenty on the line next week as well. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.